Most days.
Most days, okay. What else do you want people to know about Berry Patch Farms?
You know, I want them to know that we are really committed to excellence in produce and in experience. We want
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 12th, 2024 Louisville Planning Commission.
Recording in progress.
Oh, yes, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 12th, 2024 Louisville Planning Commission meeting with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Choi.
Here.
Commissioner Mahaley.
Present.
Commissioner Basket.
Here.
Commissioner Moline.
Here.
Commissioner Bangs.
Here.
And Chair Brown Eyes.
Here. Thank you. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Get a second.
Second.
Thank you all. So if you're here for one of the issues that is on the agenda, we'll hear that out when we get to that. But if you're here for something that's not on, you are welcome now. Seeing none, can somebody check online for me? Thank you. Yes, Ms. Krantz. Microphone. Yeah, new one. Yeah, different. There we go.
Thanks. My name is Tamar Krantz. I live in Louisville. I submitted a request to make a comment on items not on the agenda because I wanted to make a comment about the comprehensive plan update. And I know that's under staff updates, and I didn't know whether or not you would be taking public comment when that agenda item comes up.
Sure. Well, you're up here now. I'm
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me proceed then. I really appreciate that you guys came up with a really succinct vision for the city of Louisville. And I just wanted to point out something about the change. The original vision statement after the first round of public input was that Louisville is committed to a healthy, equitable, resilient, sustainable community. And then it says where we preserve our small town feel, the character. And then it was since revised and just approved on September 3rd by City Council to take away preserve our small town character and change it to create, evolve and adapt to change and to respect our past. And for some reason my printer didn't work, but then, and to support our high quality of life. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciated when this first came to you and Commissioner Basket asked that you go out to the community and ask, what do we mean by small town feel? You got a lot of really interesting responses and a lot of responses too, but now that's a little bit irrelevant. And I'm just gonna ask if you guys could go back to the community when this comes up as the committee that's in charge of the comprehensive plan and ask, what do we mean by evolve and adapt to change? I think community input is really important. I don't want to slow down your process, but I'd like to see you ask that question to the community, maybe simultaneously to the part where you're asking people what kind of policies and land use changes we want to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wanted to speak? Anybody online? No hands raised. Is anybody able to see it? No? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, then we'll move into our first item of new business, a PUD amendment and special review use for 947 Pine. I will now open the public hearing on a request for a PUD amendment and special review use. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application materials and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before the Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation and testimony by city staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we'll have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak in person is asked to complete a speaker card, which are available on the table outside. Use the raise hand function if you're participating by computer, or *9 if you're calling in by telephone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. 2 people present at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow one person to speak for up to a total of 6 minutes. The purpose of public comment is to receive public testimony and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and city of residence. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing none, thank you. Do we have notification?
Notice has been satisfied, yes.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Matt Post, Senior Planner on the Community Developments team. This particular agenda item tonight is a request for approval of Resolution 9, Series 2024, recommending approval of a request for a planned unit development amendment and special review use to allow a bar and restaurant with outdoor dining and miniature golf at 947 Pine Street, otherwise referred to as Birdie Bar in the application materials. So as mentioned, this application is for a planned unit development amendment and special review use to allow the outdoor dining use and then outdoor commercial amusement. Miniature golf is specifically and explicitly defined in the ordinance as outdoor commercial amusement. Again, both of those uses require special reviews. The subject property is 947 Pine Street, seen here on the exhibit. You can see it's right at the northwest corner of Pine Street and Front Street, and occupies a prominent location at the east gateway to downtown. The property is zoned commercial community and is also located in the area that's geographically defined as downtown Louisville as well. A bit of background here. The property was originally developed as a fueling and service station use, which was established in 1929. That building was updated in 1961 to include a car wash, which is the picture you see on the screen, I believe here, is from one of the original uses. The existing building and use that are on the site were approved as part of the George Oil planned unit development, which was approved in 1988. Continuing background, as some folks might be aware, the existing sign that's on the site is actually landmarked. It was landmarked in 1961 with the permit application, or I'm sorry, it was originally erected in 1961 and later landmarked as the Standard Oil sign. Obviously now bears the Shamrock logo. The applicant intends to keep the sign. Any change to the sign would have to be approved via an alteration certificate from the Historic Preservation Commission. And so the proposal includes an addition to the existing building, a 728 square foot total addition to the existing building. You can see in the exhibit on the screen here, the green is the existing building and the blue are the proposed additions. There is an addition to the south and then also an addition on the east side for a total building size of 2,608 square feet. Again, the proposed use is a bar and restaurant with indoor virtual golf and then outdoor miniature golf. You can see here depicted on the site plan, and outdoor dining. Some of the areas that are labeled as a beer garden right now, I believe, are the outdoor dining locations. The applicant has included a 6 to 7 foot landscape buffer directly around the site that includes a low decorative open style fence similar to what's across the street at Lucky Pie and Sweet Cow. Continuing with the proposal, based on the overall square footage, this particular property is required to provide 4 off-street parking spaces. The exhibit that you see here is reflective of existing site conditions. There are over 130 linear feet on this particular site of curb cuts and parking access points. Specifically, if you look at the northeast side of the site, there's 4 to 5 parking spaces that are head-in parking spaces, which the current condition would require a vehicle to back out over a sidewalk and into the right-of-way. We would not permit that condition under today's standards. And so working with the applicant, and in an effort to increase the walkability and reduce the likelihood of vehicle pedestrian conflicts in this particular area, we recommended that the applicant pursue a fee in lieu that would go into the Downtown Parking Improvement Fund that would satisfy their parking requirements for this particular site. And so as proposed, there is no on-site parking here. And so the access points will be shut down. And actually the applicant provided a great rendering of what that would look like. So I'm sure the majority of you are familiar with this site right now. We have 2 25-foot access points on the south side, and then one large, roughly 85-foot access point on the east side. So with this development, those access points will close, and we'll get unimpeded sidewalks with additional public street parking here. So we're anticipating anywhere from 6 to 8 additional public street parking spaces that will be available directly adjacent to the site on Pine Street and both Front Street. The applicant is requesting 2 waivers. So again, this is in addition to the existing building. The first waiver is a request for a relief from the rear 20-foot setback standard, and the second request is for relief from the 10-foot side setback standard. This, again, this property is zoned commercial community, and although it's in downtown, we don't have a downtown overlay that would override any of those underlying zone district setbacks. And so again, in an effort to retain the existing building, the applicant is requesting this relief. You can see on the exhibit depicted here, the red lines would be the setback areas. You can see where the existing building is within the setback area, and then the encroachment of the new additions. Staff are in support of these waivers as it allows for the adaptive reuse of the building, and then also activates the exterior space and the pedestrian area. So further staff analysis occurred via the Downtown Louisville Design Handbook, which again, this site is applicable to when we referenced the Downtown Louisville Framework Plan, the PUD criteria, and these special review use criteria, again, for that outdoor dining and miniature golf. And so the site is within the core area of downtown. Elements of the core area include ground floor oriented design with human scale and support for a pedestrian oriented environment that invites exploration of the area. That's the language in the design handbook. Staff believe this proposal is in line with the elements of design handbook. You can see here that what's identified as the core area of downtown, and the property is in the middle. Here's some examples of the architectural renderings that were reviewed against the downtown design standards. And so again, the design expresses human and pedestrian scale through form and material, and then the creation of an activated street edge, which is not currently there. The addition and renovation of the exterior also match the architectural vernacular of downtown to include smooth lap siding and brick veneer. It also is designed to match the mass and scale of the majority of downtown buildings, which are single and 2-story in the area. The SRU criteria, again, there we have a number of criteria to determine whether or not the special review use will have a negative impact on adjacent surrounding properties. There are 5 criteria. The first is whether it satisfies the comprehensive plan. Staff find that the comprehensive plan policies support creating this unique sense of community in this area and also speak to vibrant, healthy economies. The redevelopment of the site will lead to economic stability, which, or with the project, that matches the character of the area. So again, that second criteria is, does it lead to economic stability in the area? The site functions efficiently. This would be more related to site design, specifically horizontal site design, utilities, storm drainage, so on and so forth. This project has went through review with our Public Works Department, and they found it to be satisfactory. External effects are controlled through appropriate lighting. Building and site design, staff will be requesting notes on the PUD, requesting lights that are shielded and or downcast and or low in temperature and low wattage. And so the PUD currently reflects conformance to those notes. The second one would be a restriction of amplified music, which is also common for some of the outdoor dining uses in downtown. So a restriction from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So we'll apply those as a note on the PUD. Lastly, it improves the streetscape and pedestrian character of downtown. So with that, staff recommend approval of Resolution 9, Series 2024, recommending to the City Council approval of a planned unit development and special review use to allow a bar and restaurant with outdoor dining and miniature golf. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll open it up for commissioner questions. Anybody? Commissioner Basket.
I think your graphic showed this, but just to the first variance that's requested on the setbacks, it looks like the edge of the addition lines up with the existing building.
That's correct. So it's a continuation of an existing condition of those existing setbacks. And we can get to that real quick here so that we can discuss it.
But there you go.
But that's correct. It's a continuation of existing conditions. So the applicant is not increasing a nonconformity or reducing an existing setback. Again, it's a continuation of an existing condition that's already there.
Okay. And can you read the dimension in red of the sidewalk that is serving the other entrance to the building?
Oh, this dimension here?
No, the dimension between the edge of building and
Oh, here.
the remaining setback.
This particular sidewalk here? You know, I'm not sure what that dimension is. I'm sure the applicant might be able to answer that question for you. I don't know that we would necessarily have a requirement there, although in my staff report, I do reference what the existing setback is on the west side. It looks like that impervious area essentially encompasses that entire setback, so that would be in the staff report.
That's not a sidewalk on the west side, that's the alley. That building abuts the alley on the west side.
No, that is a proposed impervious surface on the site, on the west side. There's a door there attaching it.
It's 4
So
foot
that's
two.
in the staff report.
4'2".
4'2".
Yeah.
And so that's essentially a 4'2" setback,
Sorry, correction, 4.2 feet.
4.2 feet. Yes, great. Adjacent to the alley. Thanks. All right. Additional questions? Yes. Mr. Mulley.
Thank you, Planet Post. A couple quick questions here. The existing building itself, not the sign, has it been analyzed for historic status?
Not to my knowledge. I can tell you that I believe our prior historic preservation planner, as you all know, Amelia, originally had this case, and so the applicant can likely answer more questions in regard to exploring any historic preservation on that, but I wasn't able to find anything in the application materials that would indicate that was pursued ever.
Okay. And then my last one is, we got a couple of addendums to the packet recently. Were there public comments on this particular item at this point?
There were no public comments on this particular item tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And the sound regulations, that's consistent with all of downtown?
Yeah, we did a review of other special review uses, specifically with outdoor dining in downtown, also against our nuisance code that specifically regulates noise ordinances. We found that the 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. cutoff is the most general and most appropriate that's been applied consistently.
All right. Thank you. Any additional questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant up, please.
That's not it. Just a minute here, I'm sorry.
And if you can begin with your name and city.
Good evening, I'm Sonia Starr, and I live in Brighton, Colorado. Thanks for having us here. Matt did a great job of kind of showcasing the broader concept. I'd like to introduce you to the broader team, and then just quickly make sure you see more visually how things will look and how we plan to enhance that corner of downtown. Matt did a great job of reviewing this with the team, so we'll skip past this slide. And I am one of the co-owners of the Birdie Bar. I'm joined by a few others here tonight, as well as the extended team that's helped us bring the concept to life. And certainly they can answer any more detailed questions that the group might have. This is the inspiration board that yielded some of the concept drawings that we showed earlier. So the goal was to bring forward a very warm and inclusive environment that brought together all types of members of the community. So families, professionals, golfers, non-golfers, groups of friends, coworkers to come together and enjoy that corner. So I worked in the area previously when I worked over in the tech center, when I worked at Danone, and I always enjoyed the downtown, and I was really excited to come back and make that a part of kind of like my weekly life. So really excited about that. This kind of summarizes again what we talked about earlier. So state-of-the-art golf simulators. We will have an elevated food and beverage program. We will be very excited to host tailored events, both nonprofit, fundraising, private parties. We're very excited about golf-related parties, passionate golfers for this group, and then just making it a very professional but really approachable vibe for families and all types of groups of people. This is that same corner. You can see here the shot of the historic sign where we're proposing it could look something like this, where we have certainly honor and keep the shape, but make a very subtle update just to include the logo. And we're excited to kind of go through that process and make sure that everyone agrees with kind of our vision for that sign that I know is important. This, again, is the floor plan where we are very interested in making this walkable and approachable and making sure that this is an option for folks who organically might stumble on us and also let this serve as perhaps a destination for some folks. Same view we talked about. This is the 9-hole miniature golf area here with some nice alfresco seating. We envision some beautiful lighting. And the interior, we're excited about some of the doors on the south side. We'll have some bifold doors that allow a lot of natural light in and keep things pretty open. And we will have a bar area in the front with a walk-up window, so folks can walk up and kind of get what they need then if they want. Interior will be beautiful, warm, modern. Again, could accommodate all kinds of events or just regular commerce and traffic. And here's another view. And those are those simulator bays. So if you're standing on the east door of the existing structure, you kind of look down there, that's exactly what you'd see. So those accommodate, forest people. You're hitting golf balls, you're eating some great food, drinking some good drinks, and folks can kind of come up and watch. And this is the last view to me, which I think is the most important. This might be the view a pedestrian would see when they walk up to that corner. So I like how warm and inviting it is. It welcomes people in. I think it would be a great view coming in into that part of town, and you're seeing that complemented with the other businesses that are there. And that's what I'd love to share with you today as the applicant, and I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn for her final comments. Thanks.
Thank you. And if you can begin with name and city also.
Sorry, name and city?
Yeah.
My name is Carolyn White. I'm with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck. I'm land use counsel for the applicant, and I office in Denver.
Great.
And I now have a 30-minute presentation for you about all the legal criteria. Just kidding, I'm not going to do that. I really, really want to, but I'm not going to. But I do want to just briefly talk a little bit about, as was mentioned, there's two sets of legal criteria here, the special use review criteria and the PUD criteria. We have submitted a letter to the staff as part of our application packet that goes through all of the special use review criteria in great detail, and we'd be happy to delve into any of those further if you have questions. But really, I'm just here to tell you that it does meet all of the criteria, both for PUD and for SRU, and we agree with staff's analysis in the staff report to that effect. And we also spent a good bit of time looking at the comprehensive plan and thinking about all the ways in which this proposal furthers the goals of the comprehensive plan, and they're very similar to what staff said in their presentation about sense of community, healthy, vibrant, sustainable economy, unique indoor-outdoor space, and so on, and also contributing to the economic vitality of this part of downtown. So we're pleased to answer any additional questions that you have, and we thank you for your attention to our application this evening.
Thank you. And brevity is beautiful. Yeah. Well, that's it from your whole team? Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner, questions of the applicant?
I had 2 questions.
Commissioner Choi, go ahead.
Thanks. A couple of questions, just maybe expanding on the conceptual designs that you submitted. Am I correct in assuming that the addition to the east is a mechanical room to serve the space?
It mechanical room, also some storage, some of our electrical and AV kind of sound equipment will be in there as well. We'll probably store miniature golf equipment in there too.
Okay, but all the mechanical equipment for the building will be contained in that addition on the east and nothing outside or roof mounted?
Yes.
Justin Breeze, Studio DH Architecture in Golden. So there will be some rooftop units. There is rooftop screening provided in the design. And then that east entry is also going to be where our fire riser room is for sprinkler, for the fire sprinkler and storage.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one other question, the lighting, the proposed lighting on the site with all of those different use cases, I assume you're going to have some sort of a lighting control system with those string lights that are out front. They're nice, attractive, right? They lend to the ambiance, but they're going to be time controlled.
They will be. Yeah, the goal is to be compliant with the lighting, frankly, to avoid light pollution. And so we'll have shielded lights for those, and then the festoons will be managed.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Basket.
So back to my question about what's going on the west side of the building. I'm not able to visualize the alley there.
Sure.
So, I mean, and actually I see it appears to be a paved surface, even though it's not coming all the way to the front of the building.
So
The doorway on the west side. So what is, it's just gonna spill over until the alley?
So it is aligned with the existing structure. It is, that is the alley between 947 and Henry's. And so that door is intended to be just from the bar, a way for the staff to take out trash and things and not bring trash through the facility while during operating hours. We can take it out back and run it to the trash on the east side.
Great.
So.
And how did you anticipate that deliveries would be made?
So we will, we can go ahead and have into the alley behind, we can actually have deliveries brought around back through that same door as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Commissioner Molly?
Yeah, I have one sticking with the west boundary for just a second. Appreciated the landscape plan you provided. I would love to hear somebody explain the intent behind the trees that are along that west line. Seems awfully tight there, so I'm just curious about the landscape intent. Bordering the Hanks building.
Nice.
Yeah.
Chris March, 729 Design, Littleton. Do you have the plan?
I do right here.
I mean, I have one here, but everyone. So those are just smaller evergreen trees?
Okay, I wasn't, the one I think there was maybe a Norway pine. That one seemed like
They
yeah?
only, it's that selection will only get 4 or 5 feet wide.
Okay.
So
okay.
yes, when you see some of those, it's like, what? It's not going to be 20 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your land.
It's a tight space. So really,
Yes.
all the plant selections are kind of based on what we have spatially available.
Okay.
I don't
that
want
makes
people
good
to have
sense.
to maintain it repeatedly and keep things. So everything should just be pretty low maintenance. But yeah, they'll stay tight.
Okay. Thanks. That
Absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate the explanation.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, I'll open it up for public comment. If anybody has comments, please limit yourself to 3 minutes. Do we have any cards, or if raise your hand if you were here for this one at all? Seeing none, can somebody check online, please? No? All right. Then I'd invite the applicant for a response and closing statement.
Thank you again for the opportunity to present our vision and idea for this corner. Personally, I could not be more excited to bring this concept to the neighborhood and enrich it and make that corner lively in an entertainment corner and partner with some of the adjacent businesses. We've had great discussions with others in the area, and we're very much looking forward to opening day and contributing to the vitality of downtown. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moline?
Yeah, Chair. I just realized I had one other question.
All right, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the disposition of any kind of underground storage tank, given that this was a former gas station. So, yeah, I'm wondering if you could comment about that.
Sure. We removed the tanks, I believe, March 11th
Oh, okay. Okay.
without
All right.
any issue.
Great. Okay.
So they're gone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Sure, yep. In that case then, staff response and closing statement.
No additional comments.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing, and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or other testimony or evidence will be received. Who'd like to roll with it? Sure, Commissioner Basket? Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm very excited about this proposal. I mean, the synergy with Lucky Pie and Sweet Cow, and the synergy and proximity to downtown and extending the walkability. I think it's a creative solution with the parking. You might have to manage your own people working there because you don't want 3 of them taking up spaces that your customers could, but you'll have the customer in mind, I'm sure. So I'm excited about it, and I look forward to seeing this move forward.
Commissioner Mahaley.
I'm also very excited about this as a young family. I resonate with the comment about this being a very good synergy with other establishments in the area. I think it's an improvement in almost every way. I like that we are, preserving the historic sign. I appreciate the comment about the building, but I think the improvements to the building will only facilitate and help. And so the setbacks, I think it's worth saying I'm not concerned about them. I think they did a good job of minimizing that and feeding that into what is already there. And if we're faced with the choice of, giving the setback exemption or starting from scratch and not reusing the building, I think, at least for me, the choice is pretty clear. So I think it's improvement. I thank the applicant for the investment in Louisville, and I think this is a great project. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Choi.
Thanks, Chair. I like this proposal. I think it's going to be a great project. I appreciate a couple of the nods that are in there to trying to do some sustainability and efficiency measures. The pergolas on the south side, I think, lend well. It'll make the space a little bit more comfortable, also reduce the overall cooling load that's in the building. I think that you might find that 2 bike racks is not going to be enough in Louisville. So, however you can accommodate that future growth and expansion. And I do also appreciate the maintaining of the sign. The prevalence it is there on the corner, and I hope that it stands out enough to really be kind of that cornerstone of the development. So I'm in support of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Bangs?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the presentation. Thanks for the comprehensive outline and all the thought that's been put into it. It's certainly new, it's different. I think the town will benefit significantly, and it's certainly a significant improvement on the use case of the site previously. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Moline?
Yeah, I concur with all of my fellow commissioner comments and also with the staff comments about supporting for waivers and all the criteria support as well. So I don't have a lot more to add. I'm just, again, also excited that the energy you're going to bring to this corner is different than the energy that was represented there previously. So yeah, yep, excited.
Great, thanks. I also find myself in support of it. I find the setbacks are appropriate. I'm excited about the reuse of the existing building, keeping the historic sign intact. Obviously, it's gone through a few iterations already. Wish you luck with that process. And I would also echo the comment about maybe more bike racks are going to be needed, and consider electric charging for some of the bike racks apparently. So, but that's, I'm in favor of it, so thank you very much. With that, I would entertain a motion. There will be a motion.
Chair, I will move to approve Resolution 9, Series 2024, recommending approval of request for a PUD amendment and special review use for 947 Pine Street.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Choi.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahaley.
Yes.
Commissioner Basket.
Yes.
Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Commissioner Bangs.
Yes.
Chair Brown Eyes.
Yes. Motion carries. Good luck moving forward with it all. Thank you all for coming this evening. All right. Yeah, you guys can take off if you care to. I will now open the public hearing on request for a preliminary PUD and a preliminary plat, land use exhibit amendment, rezoning, and special review use for 1032, 1034, and 1040 East South Boulder Road. The purpose of the hearing, you've all heard this once this evening, but I have to go through it again. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application materials and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before the Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation and testimony by city staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we'll have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak in person is asked to complete a speaker card, use the raise hand function if participating by computer, or *9 if calling in by telephone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. 2 people present at the meeting may pool their minutes to allow one person to speak for up to a total of 6 minutes. The purpose of public comment is to receive public testimony and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and the staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your name and city of residence. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing none. Do we have notification?
Notice is satisfied.
Thank you.
Hello again, Commissioners. Matt Post, Senior Planner, Community Development Team. This particular item is Resolution 10, Series 2024, recommending approval of the Coal Creek Village Preliminary Planned Unit Development, Preliminary Plat, Rezoning, Land Use Amendment, Land Use Exhibit Amendment, and Special Review Use. Before we move on, I will note that Commissioners received an addendum in their staff packet today, and that included public comment that had come in after the staff packet was published. There are also additional public comments that came in after that addendum. They were posted outside, and I believe Jeff is, we had them printed. I'm not sure if they've been handed out yet, but Jeff is working on getting all of those out right now, so those are coming. So we'll start at the top here. This particular application has been under review with the city since 2021. So it was submitted, it's been through multiple staff members at this point, so there's obviously a lot going on here, so I'll take my time in trying to make sure that I explain this appropriately. But again, the applicant request is for approval of a preliminary PUD and plat that would support a development of 188 dwelling units and 13,534 square feet of commercial space on an existing site that is 10.7 acres. You can see the majority of the site is vacant outside of the northwest portion of the site. That portion was platted outside of the rest of the property in 1978 and developed subsequently. That's also where the Argentos Empanadas is, actually their own separate lot there, surrounded by the rest of this particular proposal. In order to develop some of the 188 units that are on site, the applicant is also requesting a rezone of the subject property from commercial community mixed use and residential medium density to mixed use residential. We'll cover that in an exhibit in later slides. With that rezoning, there is also a requirement that the land use plan referred to as Exhibit A that was adopted with the Highway 42 revitalization area and subsequent mixed use design guidelines in the mixed use overlay district be amended to reflect what the new zone districts would be. Again, that would be in the event of an approved rezone. The last case here would be a special review use. That would be to allow a multifamily use on the ground floor in the MUR zone district. So when we get to the PUD portion, you'll see that there are two multifamily buildings that are exclusively multifamily buildings. I'm sorry. There is a requirement that all structures in the MUR zone district do not contain multifamily dwellings on the ground floor. That would, of course, be in an effort to promote mixed-use commercial spaces. Oops. Guys, I just went back over here. I'm sorry. So a bit more background on the property. You can see that this is a screenshot of the map of the Highway 42 revitalization area. So this property is located in the Highway 42 revitalization area and the Highway 42 urban renewal area. So the revitalization area was created and adopted in 2003. The adoption and revitalization plan led to the creation of the mixed-use overlay district and the mixed-use development and design standards and guidelines, which govern development in mixed-use districts right now. The intent of the Highway 42 revitalization area was to correct blight from existing industrial land uses that were south of this particular property. The Highway 42 revitalization area encompassed all the way up to South Boulder Road and what is currently the vacant property right now. And so in accordance with Louisville Municipal Code Section 1714.020, I'm doing code reference here, but the redevelopment in the revitalization area triggers a mandatory rezone requirement to one of the zone districts listed on the future land use plan. And that's in future land use plan Exhibit A. We'll see that later in the slide here. And so in 2013, this property was rezoned. And it was rezoned with the preliminary PUD and plat, and the trigger for that rezone was the mandatory requirement for redevelopment in the area. And it's the existing zoning designations on the site today. Those are reflective of the 2013 rezone. In 2016, what was the preliminary plat from the 2013 rezone was taken as a final PUD and plat. That was approved by City Council. That development included 51 dwelling units and 29,500 square feet of commercial. The applicant did not execute that final PUD and final plat, and the eligibility for permit issuance for that PUD expired in May of 2019. So we have a 3-year essentially expiration clause on PUDs where a permit has to be pulled within 3 years of an approved PUD, or a PUD amendment has to be brought forth again in front of the Planning Commission and City Council. There were quite a few conditions attached to that 2016 approval. In 2018, I believe the applicant tried to bring it back for removal of those conditions, and that was denied at the time. I don't quite have the history on that, but the takeaway is it didn't happen. So here's a site plan of what was originally approved for the final PUD in 2016. You can see the 51 dwelling units, looks like mostly duplexes with the commercial spaces adjacent to South Boulder Road and Highway 42. You can see that the Front Street connection was approved in 2016, and then a larger version of the Cannon Circle connection was approved. And those street connections and what you see on this layout, again, are reflective of what was in the land use exhibit at the time as well, attached to the Highway 42 revitalization area. It's worth noting as well that one of the purposes outside of addressing blight in the Highway 42 revitalization area was to support the eventual commuter rail that was supposed to come through. As we all know, there were funding issues with the original implementation of the timeline. That commuter rail never panned out. I apologize. There's essentially the intent of applying the mixed-use standards to the revitalization area in conjunction with the anticipated commuter rail would be to provide that mixed-use environment, what would otherwise be referred to as a transit-oriented development, to increase density, create walkability, and then also include multimodal opportunities for transportation. And so with the funding challenges that occurred there, we know although that's not happening. However, there is currently ongoing consideration for the Front Range passenger rail, which would come through Louisville. Currently, the Front Range Passenger Rail District is working with CDOT to develop a service development plan for the Federal Railroad Administration. I think they have an anticipated completion date and/or at least a draft of that sometime around the end of 2024. There's still no actual solid completion date when they would have an agreement in place with the Federal Railroad Administration. And so looking deeper again at background and history of the particular site, the plat on the right is the original plat of Caledonia Place. It's from 1890, was recorded in 1890. You can see what's reflected in green is what's existing Griffith Street, Harper Street, and Front Street. Green are what the existing right-of-way improvements are right now. You can see that the Caledonia Place plat contemplated the connection of Front Street even back in 1890 to what is now South Boulder Road, and that would be the blue portion. The plat on the left is the Coal Creek Station filing number 2 plat. Again, that's in the northwest portion of the site. That plat also contemplated and anticipated the connection of Front Street through the site with the dedication of a 30-foot easement on the right side that's concurrent with Front Street to the south. That's highlighted in blue. And so to the rezoning request, again, the request is to rezone the areas CCMU and RM to MUR. So as you can see, this is the existing zoning designation on the site. The majority of the site is already zoned MUR, again, reflective of that 2013 rezone. And so the CCMU is a north-central portion of the site adjacent to Boulder Road, and then the east portion in that peninsula that's directly adjacent to Highway 42. Currently, residential uses are not permitted in that zone district, so the CC, the Commercial Community Mixed Use Zone District, does not allow for residential uses. There is also an existing portion of the property that is zoned RM, that's residential medium density, that's in the southern portion of the site. That RM zone district is reflective of the rest of the zoning designations in Little Italy. And so part of the applicant's request here as well is to rezone that portion of the site to mixed use residential. With the request, staff would have requested that anyway, so as not to create a split zone condition on the property. We have an odd little portion of RM there. And so I want to mention here as well that this is the rezone request because the mandatory rezone has already been satisfied. This request is a discretionary rezone by the applicant. So again, this is not a mandatory rezone with development in the Highway 42 revitalization area. That has been satisfied. This is a discretionary rezone request by the applicant. Move forward. Here's a couple examples of the the land use plan, Exhibit A. The left exhibit is the current land use plan. And again, that's reflective of the 2013 rezone. This was amended in the 2013 rezone. The proposed exhibit is on the right. You can see the change to Cannon Circle as the right-of-way, the entire property to MUR, and then the removal of the park piece there, and we'll discuss that later on in the application as well with the PUD. And so part of this request includes the preliminary plat. Again, that preliminary plat would subdivide the 10-point-acre site. There are 60 townhome lots proposed. There are individual lots in the townhomes that would allow for the fee simple sale of those units. You can see on the plat here the connection of Front Street and then Cannon Circle where it goes, where it connects to South Boulder Road and Highway 42. The plat includes 5 overall what are called blocks in total. Again, 60 individual townhome units, 4 outlots that will include drainage and detention areas, utility areas, open space, and then the parks that are proposed on site. Those would all be housed in outlots. Those outlots would be managed by a required owners association that would be required via the plat process. Again, this is just a preliminary plat. Also worth noting, there would still be a final plat process after this and a final PUD process. I wanted to say that. The city will accept 1.2 acres of right-of-way dedication with this plat. Those 1.2 acres of right-of-way dedication would facilitate the construction of Front Street at its north terminus where it is now, Front and Harper, to South Boulder Road, and then also complete the connection at Cannon Circle. There is a portion of that right-of-way dedication that will occur on South Boulder Road that will facilitate the construction of additional public amenities and/or public sidewalks directly adjacent to the site. But the majority of the public dedication on this site is coming in the form of Front Street and Cannon Circle in anticipation of construction. And so again, just looking at the plats, what the original plats contemplated, and if we look also at the land use exhibit, we can see that that land use exhibit also is reflective of a connection of Front Street and Cannon Circle. And so as was the previous PUD that was opposed, or I'm sorry, that was originally approved. And so here's the preliminary PUD. This is the actual site plan of the proposed development. So again, 60 townhome units, all fee simple townhome units, 96 total apartments distributed amongst 4 different buildings, the 2 buildings central to the site that are currently in the CCMU zone district, where the rezone is being requested will include 24 units each with ground floor commercial space. The 2 larger buildings to the west, those are exclusively multifamily units. Again, in that MUR zone district, they are permitted. However, an SRU would be required for those uses to establish multi-unit dwellings on the ground floor. There are also micro townhome units proposed by the applicant. The micro townhome units are 350 to 400 square feet in size. There are 32 of them. I've been informed by the applicant that the intent would be to sell those units. That's obviously not reflected on the plat. That would have to occur via a private condominiumization plat post approval and construction, but the applicant can fill you in on that. There's 13,534 square feet, again, of commercial space. Those are on the ground floors of the 2 centralized buildings on the north side that are directly adjacent to East South Boulder Road. And this PUD is reflective of the Front Street and Cannon Circle connections. You can see what's highlighted in blue are the areas of right-of-way that are currently not constructed, that would be constructed and/or required as part of the approval of this particular PUD. The roadways internal to the site will include detached sidewalks and tree lawns. There will also be additional public improvements directly adjacent to South Boulder Road. Through the iterations of this particular review, at some point the sidewalk condition changed from detached to attached. That's a condition here in the staff report that if this moves to approval, the applicant will work with staff to ensure that we have a detached sidewalk condition on South Boulder Road. Again, that's a sidewalk separated by a tree lawn. And so as what you see right now, assuming this moves forward, that is conditioned to change. But throughout the site, again, 5-foot detached sidewalks. Again, the detachment means there's a 5-foot sidewalk, then a 6-foot tree lawn, then the street, so there's separations. That's included on both sections of public right-of-way and then also internal to the site on what the applicant is calling alleys and or just private access ways. And you can see those distributed through the site here, and those would support alley-loaded townhomes throughout the site. So the only public dedications that would occur here would be what you see in blue, and then also the full extent of Cannon Circle is also public, but the blue would be a new public dedication. There's 23,258 square feet of park space proposed. You can see in the center of the site what's labeled as Outlot C. There's a park space proposed there, and then a pocket park proposed with the micro townhome units. You can see those are on the right side or planned right side there. There's also a detention area on the southeast side of the site that serves that whole site. And then, of course, the northwest side is undisturbed, as that is the location, I believe, of the Goodhue Ditch asset. So they can't do much in that particular location. So we'll run through the individual blocks as proposed by the applicant here quickly. So block 1 is the area where there are 32 micro townhome units. Again, those units are between 350 and 400 square feet in size, relatively small. And again, we can let the applicant discuss the idea behind those particular units. They are proposed to be 22 to 25 feet tall. There is a centralized park. Again, that's that pocket park there, and the applicant states in their application that the size will make them available at a more attainable price point. So I'll let the applicant expand on that. Also worth noting here that what you see in block 1, half of what's highlighted in green is currently zoned CCMU and would not permit residential units. So part of the rezone is a request to rezone a portion of what is now block 1 that would permit the construction of residential units here. Moving on to block 2, central to the site, it includes 36 4 and 5 unit townhomes. So those would be blocks of townhomes or row homes that would be in 4 and 5 unit clusters. They are proposed at a maximum height of 40 feet. MUR zone district standards would allow a maximum height of 45 feet in this location. So they're at 40 feet. And again, this block 2 includes that centralized 20,900 square foot, what is currently proposed as a private park, though the applicant states that it will be publicly accessible. Block 2 is currently zoned MUR, so the rezone would not apply to block 2 in this particular scenario. Block 3 in the southeast portion of the site will include 32 3 and 6 unit townhomes, so 32 dwelling units dispersed amongst 3 unit and 6 unit townhomes. A portion of this area is height restricted because of the adjacency of Little Italy. There is a buffer provision within the mixed use standards that require lesser heights when adjacent to an RM zone district. The only portion of the site where it actually applies because of distance standards is here on the on what's on the bottom and right side, those two banks of 3 units. Those are proposed at 34 feet in height, and those would satisfy the buffer standards that are in the mixed use development design standards and guidelines. Typical heights, maximum heights in an RM zone district right now are 35 feet. So those townhomes are proposed at 34 feet. All of the units in block 3, however, are 40 feet in height. Block 4, obviously that central north location that includes the mixed-use buildings. This is one of the blocks that would require a rezone. Again, currently zoned CCMU. The development proposal includes 2 mixed-use buildings and associated parking behind those buildings. There is ground floor commercial and multifamily on floors 2 and 3 above. Each building is proposed to contain 24 dwelling units. Maximum height on these buildings would be 45 feet. It's not necessarily indicated in the preliminary PUD at this point, which is not necessarily an issue for us. Assuming this moves to final PUD, the applicant will be limited to 45 feet. They have not requested any waivers for height in this particular project, so they would be limited to 45 feet based on what's been presented to us so far. And of course, this is directly adjacent to South Boulder Road. Part of the mixed-use design standards here would require a plaza space. You can see that plaza space actually situated between both buildings. And then again, street improvement standards that are to be worked out to ensure that we retain or rather get a detached sidewalk condition directly adjacent to South Boulder Road. And lastly, block 5 Block 5 northwest corner of the site. Again, this is currently zoned MUR, no request for rezone here. 2 multifamily buildings and associated parking here, maximum height of 45 feet. Again, this is where the special review use is required for those multifamily dwelling units on the ground floor. This block also includes the Argentos Empanadas, and that is a separate lot. I believe there is a private parking agreement between that lot owner and the owner of this subject property that will require parking. So there's a shared parking agreement. So the applicant will be requiring parking for that location. I believe that the requirement is just 2 via code, but the applicant can expand on that further. Quick note, I passed this up here, just wanted to indicate that in Block 3, again, a portion of Block 3 is zoned RM, and that would also be one of the rezone requests to go to MUR, and that would be on that lower portion. And if you recall that rezone exhibit that was shown, it would be in the lower portion of Block 3. And so with an analysis of the rezone, again, because this is discretionary and not mandatory, staff would look to our rezone policy. There are essentially 4 or 5 criteria in there. I can't recall the exact number right now, but the applicant would have to show that just one of those criteria are satisfied in order to recommend approval on a rezone. And so the relevant policy here would be policy number 2. And policy number 2 states the area for which the rezoning is requested has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public interest to encourage redevelopment of the area. And so in reviewing this, the change would be the current market conditions. The applicant provided a market analysis indicating that there's a weak commercial and office and retail market right now. And in the public interest would be to stimulate development of vacant areas to achieve the mixed use environment that was imagined and intended by the Highway 42 revitalization area and the South Boulder Road small area plan on Ontario Roadway, and then also provide additional housing, which was recommended by the recently adopted Louisville Housing Plan. So here's a quick screenshot of the data sets that were provided in the market analysis. On the left would be office construction in the Denver metro area from 2011 to 2021, and then on the right is retail construction in the Denver metro area from, again, 2011 to 2021. You can see that absorption has declined. The analysis indicates that the expansion of e-commerce, last mile delivery retail platforms, and last mile delivery retail platforms has resulted in weak market futures for those particular brick and mortar uses. And then the large scale transition to remote work post-COVID has had significant negative impacts on office uses in the Denver metro area as well. So moving on to the preliminary plat. The preliminary plat shall conform to LMC section 1612-075, which it needs to conform to the entirety of the subdivision regulations, be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Utility service and circulation proposals meet all city standards, and the public dedication is satisfied here with previous subdivisions. This is worth mentioning. So I alluded to the fact that I would mention this. I'm sure as the Planning Commission are aware, and some folks in the audience might be aware as well, we do have a provision in the subdivision regulations that requires the dedication of land in the event of a subdivision for public use. For a residential use specifically, that would generally be required to be 15%. I think in a scenario like this, the residential would apply. However, it has been the interpretation of staff prior to my arrival here at the city that if a property has been previously subdivided, that the public land dedication is satisfied. And so this property was subdivided in 1890, and then again, a portion of it in 1978. That's reflective of past staff interpretations. It's also reflective in the previous staff reports that were associated with the 2013 and 2016 approvals. They specifically referenced that the property had been previously subdivided in 1890, and that because of that, the public land dedication does not apply. So that would be why that wasn't addressed in the preliminary plat hearing here. I will note too, just again, this is the preliminary plat. Assuming this moves forward, we will dive into significantly more detail with the final plat. I've spoke to some folks in the audience here. The overall layout of this plat were to be approved this way would likely not change. If it changed in any significant way from preliminary to final, we would bring it back as a preliminary plat to be deliberated on. So what we see there from an overall lot layout, from a street layout, from a detention facility layout, and where proposed easement areas are, would generally remain the same. The final plat process will get more detailed. We would request horizontal civil construction documents to ensure that what's proposed will actually match up with what we see. So we would likely not anticipate significant changes between a preliminary plat process and a final plat process. So the applicant hasn't requested any modifications from our subdivision regulations at this time. So moving into an analysis of the actual PUD, again, for all intents and purposes, that would be the actual site development plan for this particular property. The applicant is requesting 6 waivers. We'll start with the waivers. We would apply the waivers. We reviewed this application as though it were in a mixed-use residential zone district, just because the applicant is requesting that again. So areas that are not currently MUR were reviewed against MUR standards in anticipation that a rezone may be approved. It saves staff time and applicant time to process an application in that fashion when it's concurrent with a rezone application. And so the first request for waiver here is block width and length design standards. The mixed-use design standards and guidelines have some pretty significant block length requirements to them. East and west and north and south, 300 to 400 feet for east and west, I think 400 to 500 feet north to south. So generally, it's appropriate to, for connectivity reasons, to allow reductions to some of those block length and design standards for what would be a typical dense development. This is a relatively dense development. There is also another standard in the mixed-use design guidelines that calls for 10-foot sidewalks internal to a site and adjacent to public rights-of-way, or just public roadways or roadways in general. The applicant's requesting a 5-foot sidewalk in these locations internal to the site. Again, that would be a 5-foot sidewalk with a 6-foot tree lawn, so a detached condition. There's reference to it in the staff report, but the applicant provided some professional engineering opinions on appropriate sidewalk widths in residential areas. The takeaway there is that 5 to 7 feet would be a standard on a local street. So the sidewalks internal to the site are proposed at 5 feet. The applicant has requested that waiver. The third waiver is the minimum lot width of 40 feet. I think you all have seen this one previously. We have a 40-foot width lot requirement in our MUR zone district, not necessarily reflective of the intent of the density that the design guidelines and the overlay are looking to achieve. So that 40-foot lot width would apply to those townhome units specifically, and allow the reduction in width in those lots. The applicant can expand on what those actually look like. Fourth, the waiver here is to the minimum building coverage requirement of 40%. Our mixed-use design standards require minimum coverage on site of 40%. And so that's relatively significant. The applicant is requesting a lesser amount. I'd have to look through the plans, but I'll let the applicant state exactly what it is, but it is less than the 40% requirement. I'll let the applicant cover it again. Our standards require more density, more coverage. The applicant is requesting a waiver for less coverage on the site. Fifth one here is a 20-foot rear yard setback. Again, that would apply to all new lots that are subdivided in the mixed-use zone district. That is to allow the subdivision and fee simple sale of those townhome units. Each individual rectangle that you see for a townhome unit would actually have its own individual setback standards associated with it as well. There's 20-foot setback requirements on those. And so the applicant is requesting relief from those particular standards. You can see here in the diagram that the applicant provided where the rear property line setbacks would impact the overall development. They're shown in blue. So there's no directly adjacent impact to the Little Italy neighborhood, and that would be due to how the townhomes are oriented. And so you can see on the north side there is some blue on that side, but there's a separation between the detention area right there, and then the townhouses on the bottom left side again are facing Little Italy. So again, the 20-foot, the request for the 20-foot waiver would allow the subdivision of those townhome units is essentially what the takeaway is there. Last waiver that's been requested is relief from the 70% of street-facing property lines must contain a building. Again, this is a density requirement in a mixed-use zone district. Essentially what that states is if you have a 100-foot wide property, 70 feet of that property along a public street frontage has to contain a building within the minimum setback area. And so that would be a provision that you would see typically in very dense urban areas. And so the applicant is requesting relief from that standard. I believe their number is somewhere around 50%. Again, this also includes the new rights of way that are proposed within the site right now. Obviously, part of the PUD requirements would be to satisfy the provisions of our inclusionary housing ordinance, section 1776. That requires 12% of the units on site to be set aside as affordable, or the applicant may pursue another option to satisfy. Based on previous conversations with the applicant and my inheriting this particular project, the original approach was to pursue a voluntary alternative agreement for inclusionary housing on this site. That is an option to satisfy the inclusionary housing requirement. It essentially allows for, maybe a novel idea or option to satisfy what would otherwise be required as inclusionary and have to meet the intent of that standard and essentially go above and beyond what the inclusionary housing requirement actually is. In further conversations with the applicant post-packet publication, the applicant has indicated that they intend to pursue deed-restricted units on site at this time, or maybe a combination thereof. I'll let them talk through that. But your staff packet states that the applicant is pursuing the voluntary alternative agreement, and there was a condition that was originally included in the staff packet indicating that we were going to work with the applicant to ensure that that voluntary alternative agreement satisfied the inclusionary zoning standards. At this point, with additional information, we wanted to provide that directly to you based on the applicant's intention, and so I'll let the applicant speak to that further. We've modified the condition with the addendum just to simply state that we will work directly with the applicant to ensure that the inclusionary provision is satisfied on any future applications. Part of the requirements of PUD of this scale would be a traffic study. The report concludes that the proposed development can be successfully incorporated into the existing roadway network. That's the overall takeaway. You can obviously see here on the table that was provided in the report, what you see is red. You'll see A, B, C, D, F next to those numbers. Those indicate level of service at intersections. I think generally for a level of service to be acceptable, it would need to be a C or better, operating at a C or better. This shows proposed with the development, proposed level of service operation in the year 2029 and in the year 2050. You'll see at Courtesy Road and South Boulder Road, that intersection is currently performing at a poor level of service and is anticipated to continue performing at a poor level of service. There are some staff initiatives and other items we're doing, including the Future 42 plan, right? That's obviously a CDOT roadway. We have a single lane Highway 42. So as folks in here know, if you're commuting during rush hours, morning or afternoon, that's a significant delay there. However, that is currently operating at a level of service that is unacceptable to the traffic study. Now, the traffic study was reviewed by third-party engineers. So our Public Works team, our engineers, sent it out to a third-party traffic organization for review and approval of that. And that was reviewed and approved by third-party engineers and the Public Works Department as well. Part of the requirements for a rezone would be a fiscal analysis. This was adopted at some point in the past, and essentially the purpose of the fiscal analysis is to determine whether or not a proposed development would result in a net deficit to the city. And so you can see here that we've proposed a high scenario and a low scenario. Within both of those scenario options, a current zoning and a proposed zoning. And so you'll see at the bottom the 20-year fiscal impact and the average annual net impact. Through the proposed zoning, adding in all of the information that the applicant provided to us as far as cost of units, cost of construction, cost per square foot. We have a very complicated fiscal analysis tool that was provided to us by an independent contractor. We ran through this multiple times and found that the proposed zoning does not create a net deficit to the city. Current zoning did create a net deficit. We did take what was originally approved as far as those numbers were concerned in the 2016 PUD and plat, and we included those in the fiscal analysis model. We were a bit surprised by the numbers that popped out of this. We went through it multiple times to make sure it was correct. So again, the high scenario, and I'll expand here as well, the high scenario would be at costs of both construction and the cost of construction and then retail and or market costs of these units at 100%. The low scenario is at 80% of cost. So again, you can see it doesn't result in a net deficit based on the fiscal analysis tool. I will just note here as well quickly that there's a minor error in the staff report at the fiscal analysis section. Under a table, there's a number of apartment units that are called out. It states 154. That's not correct. I believe there's 128 total apartment units or somewhere around those. We actually included the micro townhome units within the apartment units because of the sizes. They were closer in size together. So the fiscal analysis tool was done correctly. We have the files for that show that was done correctly, but there is just that minor typo in the staff report. I want to make sure the community and Planning Commission are aware of that. So again, moving through the last case that would be associated with this, we have a special review use. The special review use would be approved with the final plat and final PUD. It is obviously, of course, worth bringing up at the moment because their use on the northwest corner of the site hinges on the approval of a special review to allow ground floor multifamily. So again, we'll run through the same scenarios or review criteria that we did for the previous application. And so first one, comprehensive plan policies support corridor development patterns consisting of multifamily and mixed-use development along the South Boulder Road corridor. Redevelopment of the site will lead to economic stability in line, again, with the Highway 42 revitalization area goals, as is called for in the Highway 42 revitalization area plan. The site of the proposed SRU functions efficiently. It's parked appropriately. Obviously, there's the new street that would be proposed is an item of concern. However, with the traffic study presented to us showing that the existing roadway network can handle the new volumes that are coming through, this would be the determination on the review use. External effects are controlled through appropriate lighting, building and site design, additional road networks. Again, the addition of the road network allows for the connectivity that would be required for a development of this density in this area. It also adds pedestrian ways and further improvements along South Boulder Road. So we're getting pedestrian ways along the rights of way, and then again, those improvements along South Boulder Road. And so with that, staff recommend approval of an ordinance rezoning portions of the Caledonia Place subdivision plat from CCMU and RM to MUR and amending Exhibit A, land use exhibit referenced in LMC Chapter 1714. That's a separate ordinance that's been attached. Staff also recommend approval of Resolution 10 Series 2024 for approval of the Coal Creek Village preliminary PUD and plat with the following conditions: that the applicant will work with staff in the final PUD process to redesign the proposed sidewalk and right-of-way improvements directly adjacent to South Boulder Road. That the final PUD shall comply with Colorado State Bill 24005, which will prohibit local governments from allowing the installation of non-functional turf. It's a recent bill that was passed that will have sweeping impacts. The timescale of this particular project, staff felt it pertinent to ensure that this project complies with the non-functional turf bill that we will be adopting at some point here in the future, or an ordinance rather that we'll be adopting at some point in the future. And then in the final PUD process, the applicant shall provide all necessary evidence to support the request to satisfy the inclusionary housing provisions, including a voluntary alternative agreement or other agreed upon options to satisfy in accordance with LMC section 1776050. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. I think I'll propose we take about a short 5-minute break. And we'll come back for commissioner questions of staff.
Great.
So we'll be back here at 7:55. Thanks. Thanks. If everybody could take their seats and reconvene, please.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. We will now open it up for commissioner questions of staff. Commissioner Mahaley.
I have some questions about traffic flow. Could you pull up the picture showing, well, really any of the internal roads and how they interface with the existing South Boulder Road and Highway 42? So I think this may be part of what you're referring to come later in terms of traffic improvement. But, you know, in terms of the current assessment that this could be successfully implemented as is, I'm assuming that means without any changes to the lanes or stopping or traffic flow on existing roads there, South Boulder Road and Highway 42?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you look at the median improvements in South Boulder Road that are directly north of the proposed access point, there's a right in, right out, and left in option only that's there. The traffic study doesn't recommend any additional improvements. We also, again, it's important to note that we adopted the Future 42 plan. That is essentially a comprehensive public improvement document that includes proposals for signalized intersections and takes into account build out with a Highway 42 revitalization area plan. And so I don't believe there's any improvements proposed north to South Boulder Road. What I will say is that at Cannon Circle specifically, I believe Cannon Circle right now is currently would be a full function turn. So left in, left out, right in, right out. The Future 42 framework plan actually calls for a median in the center there. So when that plan is adopted and implemented, left turns out of Cannon Circle would no longer be a possibility.
And so I think you're feeding into part of my question. So, and I think you may have said this on the intersection with Front, but so where Front intersects South Boulder Road, so if you're leaving this development, is that a right turn only on the South Boulder Road?
It is a right turn only on South Boulder Road. That's
and
correct.
what I think you said, what I think I just heard you say was that on Cannon Circle, there on the right where we intersect Highway 42, currently that could be a left or right exit, but eventually it'd be a right only?
Yes.
Okay, and so hypothetically, if you're leaving this development and wanting to go to Boulder, right? So that would, you'd either have to go to South Boulder Road, turn right, and then somehow turn around to, either go up to baseline or whatever, or you'd have to go south and then somehow work your way through.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question is that you'd have to go south, catch Griffith Street, and then take Griffith Street up. And I do believe the Highway 42 also calls for a signalized intersection.
And that's where I'm going. Like if you wanted to go west, you're going south first.
Correct.
Which is something we'll talk about later, I think. Okay.
Correct.
And then in terms of parking, I was reading it and just looking at the graphic, it seems sparse on parking. How does the parking ratio of this development relate to other higher density developments in Louisville?
Yeah, I would say it's right in line. I think the majority of parking here, at least in the townhomes, right? There's 2 spaces per townhome that are garaged units, and then you have 2 surface parking spaces. The other items that may be hard to see here is that on the South C Avenue, you can see that there's parking spaces on the south side of C Avenue, directly adjacent to the proposed curb line. Parking in the southwest corner, and then there's also parking that's proposed along on-street parking that's proposed on Cannon Circle. I don't believe that's incorporated in the overall parking counts, but that would be permitted via our regulations. You can park on a local street, although that wouldn't be permissible to count toward satisfying overall parking requirements, but we could take a closer look at that as well.
So on the south, I did see the parking in the southwest there. Are you saying on that alleyway or?
Yeah, if you look at C Avenue.
Private alley, yeah, C Avenue.
It's on the south.
Can you use the mouse?
Yeah, so that is sort of on that lower property boundary. You're saying there's street parking there?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting the mouse there, but yeah, that lower, you can see parallel parking that's proposed at that site, yes.
I think I see the vertical lines, which I missed before. And then good slide to have, because my last question was, usually Front Street and Cannon Circle are connected. I'm assuming that's through the private streets and alleyways is what you're referring to there.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll
Yes.
Yes, I have a follow-on question regarding traffic flow. So I think you stated earlier that the Front Street connection was approved back in 2016. So it was approved when the development, or the PUD, was tentatively approved for 51 or 55 dwellings.
51 dwelling units.
Right? Not for 188 dwellings.
Correct.
So, okay, I know that's a concern.
Any additional circulation?
Yeah. If I could, sticking with the circulation question. So I definitely understand the concerns about Front connecting to Griffith from neighbors, others. I understand the positives for having those kinds of grid connections in other settings. My question is, what would Public Works, if you were to not allow Front Street to connect with Griffith, would Public Works look at this subdivision then as not having enough access points, or is that, yeah, maybe if you could build on that.
Yeah, I can. Can you promote Cameron, by the way? We do have our city engineer. He's virtual at the moment, so he can probably answer some additional questions. Prior to him coming on, I would posit that would require a whole new traffic study, right? I mean,
sure, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure the traffic study is taking into account the connection to Griffith Street and then the future signalized intersection at that location. So that would change the dynamic of the development. But Cameron is online and available as well. Cameron.
Sure. Cameron Folks, I'm the city engineer up in Public Works. So we did chat about this Front Street connection, and that is critical. Just as the commissioner mentioned, if you want to go out west to Boulder, having only the 3 connections proposed really makes it challenging for people leading this development. So really, the development as is, that Front Street connection is pretty crucial to this development. So we would have to kind of start at the drawing board and start over.
Okay. Thanks.
Any additional hot questions regarding circulation, traffic? Commissioner Peskett.
Could you speak a little bit more to the sidewalk reduction with, so I'm comfortable with 5-foot sidewalks internal to the development. I'm not so comfortable with it on either South Boulder Road or Highway 42. So I'm wondering if you know what the Highway 42 plan was recommending and some thoughts on that, because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic on both those legs of the street.
I can tell you that the reduction for 5 feet is not applicable to South Boulder Road. Okay. Although I do believe the applicant is requesting a reduction to 8 feet on South Boulder Road. So again, I'll let the applicant discuss that. We need to work out the details of that public improvement at a later process, but that does not apply. It would not be supported on South Boulder Road. As far as Highway 42 is concerned, I'd have to take a closer look at what the public improvement is there. I don't have it directly in front of me, but similar to South Boulder Road, likely wouldn't support a 5-foot detached sidewalk on Highway 42.
I'd like us to consider an 8-foot sidewalk there.
Any additional
It's only
questions?
a small section, though.
Chair, I have one on circulation. Just on the traffic impact study that was completed, of the 5 elements that were there, it looked like the limits of that study were restricted pretty much to the project boundary, with the acknowledgement that there is essentially no current or future left out of the development, and everything that would go west would be going south first, knowing that that Front Street connection is primary to the internal side of that. Was there any consideration by staff to expand that or the traffic impact study to look at those impacts outside of the project boundary, but further down on Front Street?
I'll let Cameron answer that question. Cameron, if you're on.
Yeah, back on again. Cameron Folks, city engineer, Public Works. Thanks, Commissioner. So we haven't explored that with them, and just a big note that Cannon Circle currently does have a left out, and so the current plan there is to monitor that And if we have any issues at this intersection with that full turn movement, then we would restrict left turn movements from South Boulder Road into Cannon Circle.
Any additional traffic circulation? We can move into other issues. We can always come back to it if anything comes up, but additional questions?
I had a,
Commissioner Choi.
I had a question that was a little bit different. So just going back to the inclusionary housing, just a clarification. I believe, so it was indicated that the applicant wants to pursue the voluntary alternative agreement. Then you stated that maybe that position changed, and then at the end, the staff recommendation looked like it said that the applicant would pursue at final PUD either the voluntary alternative agreement or the inclusionary housing.
I think at this point it's to be determined. The applicant's going to have to present us a case for how they satisfy inclusionary housing. We continue to include the voluntary alternative agreement. I think simply because, again, this project has been in review since 2021, and I believe that was the initial intent. But yeah, at this point, based on those conversations with the applicant, that will have to be determined.
Okay, I have a follow-on question.
Please, Commissioner Banks.
I presume the outcome of that decision, does that impact the fiscal analysis?
It likely would, yeah, absolutely. We would have to rerun the fiscal analysis because the market value of those deed restricted units would not obviously be reflective of what they are now. That's correct, yeah.
So there would be value in the units, but likely a net negative on the fiscal analysis.
Hard to say, but it would impact the analysis, however, surely, yeah.
Thanks.
On that note, so the language in the city ordinance for the 12% of units, is it really that wide open, or?
The language that's referred to is there are multiple options to satisfy the requirements for the inclusionary ordinance. The primary option would be to provide 12% of the units on site as affordable deed-restricted units. Half of those would be at 60% of AMI. The other half of those would be at 60 to 80% of AMI. The applicant has the opportunity to present an application to staff, the Planning Commission, and City Council for approval that would allow the inclusionary provisions to be satisfied via fee in lieu. I'm sure we've seen that previously. Dedication of another site or units on another site. Again, the voluntary alternative agreement as well. There's one or two more in there, but there are multiple options that the applicant may pursue to satisfy that provision.
So cutting to the chase, units though, that could be potentially met with the micro units?
Can you say that again, Chair?
12% of units is simply units. It doesn't have anything to do with the size.
Well, I would say that if the applicant is proposing to include 12% of units, I believe there is a provision that those units have to be generally similar to other units on site. And so I don't believe that we would accept 12% of those units as micro townhomes because they're not similar to other units and unit sizes and unit amenities in the area.
Thank you. Additional questions? Commissioner Mulley? Okay.
Setbacks. So the waiver request, I think in the packet, it says the request is to be anywhere from 6 to 20 feet. I presume fire concerns, fire mitigation concerns, that's all acceptable at 6-foot setbacks?
From a fire mitigation perspective, that would all be handled during permit review under building code requirements. So that wouldn't necessarily be anything we would have the purview to comment on or review on at this moment. However, Louisville Fire Protection has reviewed it for emergency access and had no additional comments at this point. So,
Commissioner Mulley?
Yeah, I think I have a sense of what the answer to this might be, but I noticed that when you're rezoning into MU-residential, you need to have two distinct uses. And on this property, we would say those are residential and commercial.
Yeah, I believe the previous determination by staff that accepted this application and taken it to this point was that the the mixed use buildings
Yeah.
that are proposed on site would satisfy that provision by providing two distinct uses, yeah, residential and commercial or retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Additional questions? No additional questions for staff at this time? All right. I would invite the applicant up for presentation, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. My name is Joel Weichert. I'm a landscape architect with Ripley Design based in Fort Collins, Colorado. I am pleased to be here this evening to kind of present Coal Creek Village on behalf of the applicant and the builder, Markel Homes. Markel, Jason, and Michael Markel are here this evening to answer any questions you might have about their architecture along the way. If you're unfamiliar with this home builder, they are Boulder County's local home builder. If you look at the map on your left, you can see some of the communities they've developed in the county over their time. They've been family owned for over 50 years and are really design driven, both in the development of their variety of products, both single family, townhome, multifamily, and mixed use products, but also have a focus on sustainability and green building. They've been issued an award in 2021 by their peers for recognition in their leadership in that stance. They're also very familiar with Louisville, have developed the North End community here, as well as kind of assisted homeowners after the Marshall Fire by offering floor plans and helping guide them through the rebuilding process. So they are no strangers to Louisville. To provide a little bit of site context for this project, Coal Creek Village is kind of the center of your screen there in red. As you've heard, kind of South Boulder Road is kind of that immediate northern high-intensity boundary with some office and retail further north, and then a larger multifamily neighborhood further north than that. The western boundary is made up of a railroad line that weaves its way through downtown Louisville. Louisville Middle School and adjacent single-family neighborhoods are further west. Highway 42 makes up another high-intensity roadway on the eastern side of the property, and right at that intersection of Highway 42 and South Boulder Road is existing kind of commercial uses that kind of make up that kind of traditional highway commercial aspect. Further south, there is a single-family neighborhood named Little Italy, and further south than that is the Delo development that carries that mixed-use residential zoning and offers some similar architectural products as well. And of course, downtown Louisville, where we all are this evening. So I know this is a very complex project application-wise, and just when we bring an application forth to you all, we look at a variety of adopted plans and documents. Those include, your most recently adopted comprehensive plan from 2013, the small area plans that are applicable, the framework plans. We look at the municipal code, the zoning maps, the mixed use development design standards and guidelines, which are also held into the MUR zoning, and of course the standards within that zoning. So it's a lot of complex things, but by reviewing those and working closely with staff, we've kind of brought forth these 5 applications, and we really think about them in 2 ways. The bird's eye view, higher level applications are kind of that rezoning and the revision to Exhibit A in the Highway 42 framework plan. Those really coincide with one another, and it really just talks to land use. The details of what the future development could look like are fully within that PUD and the preliminary plat. So to give you some context on why we're requesting some of those high-level kind of changes, I want to look at a couple of policy documents that we have looked at and considered over time, as well as kind of dive into the specifics of that. So when we look at the 2013 comprehensive plan, you can see on the image on the right, it's kind of the black dashed box, kind of outlines what that plan would call for. This site really calls for a mix of that urban center and urban neighborhood typology. That urban center typology really calls for that mix of uses, the retail, commercial. It also talks about designing for destination gathering places and integrating the built environment to the public spaces. The urban neighborhood typology really talks to residential as a primary use, but then kind of providing a range of densities within that mix as well. Looking at the South Boulder Road Small Area Plan, this plan was approved in 2016 and largely follows exactly that 2016 Coal Creek Station PUD that was approved that same year. The main takeaways kind of from this plan and from a planning aspect are immediately adjacent to South Boulder Road, you have that kind of retail aspect, that commercial, and then interior to site, you have those medium residential kind of products in there. So there's also some community design principles that we kind of really looked at in placemaking concepts. That includes like dispersing places for people to go and stay throughout the development, as well as finding ways to kind of knit the community together, whether that be the neighborhood to the south to what we're doing further north, and then also bringing people into our site as well. One of the big placemaking concepts that really dominates our site plan is creating kind of parking rooms and kind of reducing, the vehicle presence along the public domain, whether it be Front Street or Cannon Street, and really trying to make it a pleasant pedestrian experience. Very recently, I know you all have adopted your housing plan earlier this year, and that plan not only documents existing conditions and challenges within the housing market in Louisville, but then also seeks out some strategies and identifies strategies on maybe how to alleviate the situation over time. The first strategy identified specifically speaks towards targeted policy and zoning changes, of which it specifically talks about seeking out vacant or underutilized areas that may not allow commercial uses right now, but then being able to, or may not allow residential uses right now, but then being able to allow that as well. Specifically, also calls out that South Boulder Road corridor, which we're in as well. Matt did a great job kind of explaining kind of the areas that we're requesting to rezone. As you can see here, the majority of our parcels are already that MUR zoning. There's just a few small areas that we're requesting to be rezoned. The big takeaway that I want to note from that change from community commercial to MUR is many of those same commercial uses, like office, retail, small restaurants, professional services, are still allowed in the MUR. It's just the added benefit that you'll see in our proposal that we can add residential above on the second and third story to really kind of maximize that land use. Also rezoning that southwestern corner to that MUR allows us to kind of have a contiguous zoning development with the same standards that would apply across the board. Matt also did an excellent job of kind of describing the history of the Exhibit A framework plan and kind of how that's changed over time, specifically in relation to the rezone from the previous developer's project. So I won't spend too much time here. So our team believes that the proposed revisions are consistent with the purpose and intent of the Highway 42 Area Framework Plan and the Municipal Code for the following reasons. The revisions will enable for a vibrant mixed-use community to be constructed that adds commercial along South Boulder Road, as well as providing a variety of residential housing types. The proposal strengthens existing neighborhood by extending Front Street north all the way to South Boulder Road from Harper to the south, which adds kind of that vehicle connectivity that's described in so many documents that are already approved and have talked about through the city. It also allows us within that right-of-way to add safe pedestrian connections that move north and south, and then of course east and west also within the development. Landscaping and medium-density residential is proposed adjacent to existing residential with the proposal you'll see, which is a less intense land use transition than a plan that would strictly have a commercial or thought about intense land use immediately adjacent to the existing neighborhood. And additionally, the Highway 42 Framework Plan specifically calls out trying to avoid industrial or large-scale commercial uses, and that is not proposed with this proposal. So with the appropriate zoning in the Exhibit A kind of refined here, we can kind of move into our site plan and get into the fun details that we're talking about. Some of this will kind of be a repeat from Matt's presentation, but the big highlight here is, with this space, we're able to provide for 188 dwelling units, a mix of townhome, the micro townhome products, and multifamily units. In addition, we're really looking forward to adding kind of that 13,500 square feet of commercial along South Boulder Road to kind of keep in line with that vernacular that's been existed within the comp plan and the South Boulder Road Small Area Plan, excuse me. The way we kind of look at the site is kind of break it up. I'll start in kind of the northwest there, where you have Building 1 and Building 2, which are intended for that multifamily use. The architecture is fronting the street, brought all the way kind of towards the right-of-way. The idea with that is then the parking to service those buildings are located in the rear, and from the pedestrian experience, the architecture is a dominant presence, not a parking lot. When you move across Front Street between buildings 3 and 4, as I said, those are proposed to be first floor commercial, around 6,750 square feet per building, with residential above. The space between the two is meant to be a mixed-use plaza that I'll show you kind of an illustration of here in a minute, but it's meant to kind of activate that space, not only for future commercial tenants or people coming to shop or do business there, but then also for the residents of those buildings and the Coal Creek Village development as a whole. Moving south there, those large trees in the center of the parking lot that services the mixed-use area kind of cover the protected pedestrian walk. The idea is to connect that mixed-use area to the larger pocket park that is centrally located within the proposed development. That park will be privately maintained. The intent is to be publicly accessible, so then people within the development can come in, throw frisbee with their dog, play with their kids, read a book in the sun, that sort of thing. It's bookended on each side by alley-loaded townhomes, and the intent of it is if the front doors face the pocket park, that creates a very friendly pedestrian kind of scaled room to recreate in, and then the garage and vehicles are serviced by private alleys located in the rear. Throughout Coal Creek Village, you'll kind of see the major theme is getting those kind of pedestrian nuisances like curb cuts and driveways and vehicles that you kind of see in a lot of developments off of the public right-of-way and located in the rear, so then it's a more pleasant experience for the pedestrian moving through the space and really activate these sites. So townhomes are located centrally there, right where it kind of says pocket park and surrounding. Townhomes are also proposed along the western boundary of the property, and private alleys access those townhomes. Moving along Cannon Circle there, on the east side, that's where those micro townhome units are kind of planned for. The idea for that is kind of a super efficient, almost apartment-like efficiency, but in a townhome form. It's kind of part of that. Markel is design-driven and trying to really work through some new architectural ideas. There's also a small pocket park, located on that eastern side. Same kind of privately maintained public access that the larger one will have, and then detention is also located along that eastern side, as that is the low area of our site, so that's where water will naturally kind of collect, so we want to build a facility to catch our development's stormwater structures. As Matt detailed, Front Street would get a connection from South Boulder Road all the way down to Harper Street, but then also Cannon Circle will make the full L-shaped connection rather than having two separate dead ends that exist today. To kind of give you a little bit of a feeling of what we're hoping to attain with this development, we provided some illustrations here. This first one is of that mixed-use plaza between the mixed-use buildings. The intent is to just use really good design, material choices, and site furnishings just to create a really welcoming environment that not only is beneficial to the commercial that will be there, but will attract people throughout the development to kind of hang out there, congregate, and move throughout the development as a gathering space, a destination that aligns very well with kind of some of the big ideas within the policy documents for this area. This next illustration is further south within that larger pocket park. As you can see, that is the big green flexible space for people to use to throw a frisbee to their dog, throw a football around, sit and read a book, that sort of thing. For this image, we just kind of have some massing models for the architecture to front it. So once again, it kind of creates that comfortable enclosed feeling. That's a more pleasant experience than it would be if there were vehicle traffic, surrounding that space. Also, I want to point out, kind of in the horizon line down there where your view naturally goes, the two buildings in the back are those mixed-use buildings, so there's a clear sight line between that mixed-use plaza and the pocket park. This is an illustration of the smaller pocket park, kind of around that micro townhome area. The idea for this would be, just a smaller gathering space, but maybe include a small amenity, maybe a nature play-based obstacle course for kids to play on, that kind of thing. This illustration kind of demonstrates the public domain, kind of the presence we want from the streetscape with this development. So when you have the architecture that fronts the street, those narrow front yards, instead of being larger, maybe turf, they're going to have robust shrub plantings, perennials. that 5-foot detached walk as opposed to an attached walk that may be wider. Kind of creates a better feeling experience. And then we just double checked our PUD. It is an 8-foot kind of xeriscape tree lawn. It's a little bit wider too. So the intent with it is get people off of that roadway and kind of make them feel a little bit more comfortable walking along the public domain and then the other areas of the development as well. Moving into the architecture portion of this project, we have some renderings here for you of the mixed use and multifamily buildings. As I said, they are proposed to be 3 stories. And really, something you can really notice is the amount of glazing that you'll see, the windows. The idea with that is not only is it attractive because it lets in a lot of light, but then on the interior, you know, for those apartments, those commercial spaces, it'll really let in that light rather than having like a dark apartment, which nobody likes. And also attractive for commercial tenants. The interior of the spaces will be designed to kind of have that open space concept to really maximize space for anybody who might be in there someday. Quality building materials are going to be utilized, and you'll kind of see a little bit of continuity throughout the proposed architecture, just so the design of the development talks to each other throughout the space. This is a rendering of an example of a couple of the fourplex options for the townhomes. You know, the townhomes, like I said, employ similar architectural materials, but then they use different elements like the gable roofs or the shed roofs up top for the modern style to kind of really articulate, you know, individual units. Also, you know, building projections will kind of help create a dynamic architectural feeling and identify those units as well. Final architecture here relates to the micro townhomes and kind of their general plan. You know, they'll use dynamic roof forms, the butterfly and the shed, to kind of create a dynamic pitch. But as I said earlier, they're really designed for efficiency. So kind of the idea is think of the young professional or person who may not need a lot of space, but wants to enter the housing market. They want to build equity. So that would be a nice price point to get in, but you don't need a ton of room nor super large down payment to get into the market and start that process. The architecture proposed and kind of the conditions we're proposing are found within the vicinity. So the images on the top of your screen are examples of architecture that exists today. Top left, in the Delo development, the existing townhomes, you see that kind of large architecture that fronts the streetscape, those narrow front yards, but then they have that attached sidewalk as opposed to detached. Compared to that, what we have below, the same kind of feeling with the building massing and the narrow yards, but then making sure pedestrians have a little bit more buffer between them and any cars that may drive by. Immediately north of the site is the existing multifamily. The Steel Ranch is the one we kind of pulled specifically. Those 3-story multifamily buildings, the massing are present, you know, within a quarter-mile walking distance, and are kind of reminiscent of what we're proposing, although I'd argue ours have a little bit more building articulation and contrasting kind of color schemes and materials to kind of make it pop a little bit more. The kind of confusion that came up regarding the inclusionary housing, as time has progressed here, you know, the applicant has decided that they want to pursue towards dedicating 12% of total units on site as deed restricted affordable housing. So if you have 188 units, this means 23 units would accompany that. The unit mix for those units has yet to be determined. We're planning on doing that at final PUD at final plat, since that is when inclusionary housing would formally be approved. It would be a mix of for sale and for rent products, but the idea is to kind of disperse them throughout the site and kind of figure that out as time goes on here. And then just a reminder, affordable units will have equal access to the development's amenities as the market rate units, and they will employ the same quality design and materials that a market rate unit would be. There should be no difference at all between the two. As Matt mentioned, we do have a special review request to allow for residential uses on the first floor of multi-unit dwellings. Residential is a permitted use on the first floor. It's just subject to y'all's review. The proposal for first floor residential is complementary with the adjacent neighborhoods. If you look to the south, if you look to the north, it is regularly found. So it's keeping in kind with the development that exists within the vicinity. Also, we believe that residential on the first floor, multi-unit dwellings really would activate the pedestrian space, particularly kind of the interior of the site, getting people to head outside their front doors and get on that streetscape and going towards some of these public places that we've designed and help really activate the neighborhood. As Matt mentioned, we do have 6 waivers requested with the project. I'll run through them and try to be brief here with my time. Waiver 1 really deals with the MUDDSG, which prescribes minimum block lengths and widths for what the ideal block size should be. We're kind of short and long on 4 of our 5 blocks, and they range from being 5 feet short to about 145 feet short. But really kind of the rationale behind this waiver is that when you have an infill project like this, the rest of the built environment has already come in around you. So when you have an odd-shaped parcel, your access points are predetermined. Your kind of your street connections, whether it be Cannon Circle and Front Street, they're already predetermined. So regardless of any proposal coming forward, you would need a similar waiver just because you're dealing with the existing conditions, not a perfect square for development. Waiver 2 does relate to the public sidewalk design standards. In the MUR district, it's recommended that there be a 10-foot minimum wide sidewalk incorporating tree planting. The way this is written, though, in the code, it really speaks towards an attached walk, a nice, wide, really wide walk, which is typically seen in extremely urban environments. Our proposal for the interior of the site is to kind of show 5-foot wide walks with that 8-foot detached parkway. We believe it's be more fitting for residential development, and we think it's kind of more beneficial for that pedestrian to be off the roadway rather than having that connected attached walk. Sorry about that. For waiver number 3, it deals with minimum lot width, which the code speaks towards being 40 feet. The townhome lots vary in width from 24'6" all the way to 32 feet wide. And really the rationale behind that kind of comes from a couple different perspectives here. The first being that by reducing lot width, the developer can gain more efficiency with the development and build homes that are kind of smaller in size, which reduce the cost to the people who are going to buy them someday. So it plays into this idea of attainable housing and finding diverse points of range to hit. Also, the smaller lots fit the lifestyle of a lot of active adults who may not want to maintain a wider house, a bigger house, a wider yard, that sort of thing. And especially as we look forward towards kind of the future population trends here in the near future, like towards aging populations, it just means less maintenance, which is a lot of people may look for. Waiver 4 does deal with building coverage. The MUR district requests 40% coverage. Our proposal is a little over 21% here, even though we do have many buildings on this site as they are designed. And our rationale behind it is the standard is really meant to create an urban scale development with architecture being very present within the design and the aesthetic and the feeling of the place. And we believe our development does that by really focusing that architecture towards the street, towards the amenities, and having people kind of interact with it as they move throughout the space. Additionally, that 40% standard is really hard to meet without providing structured parking. Kind of the dirty secret of development is largely parking requirements, and also access for emergency service largely determines how we site plan and make sure we're fulfilling requirements and access for those services. Also, it's very difficult to provide livable landscape areas that can be utilized as amenity areas with that 40% mark. If a strict interpretation, we'd probably lose a lot of our great amenity spaces that we've carefully planned for over time. Waiver number 5 deals with minimum setback from the rear property line. This applies to specifically the townhome and micro cottages, micro townhomes, excuse me, in their rear yards. On the plan here, you can see the areas in red where the standard would apply. The rationale for that is the micro townhome products are designed for kind of urban scale living, as well as the townhomes. Smaller backyards mean reduced maintenance, all that good stuff I kind of spoke of earlier. Additionally, the code, when it was written, doesn't really account for this idea of new urbanism design that we see in so many developments, where it's kind of smaller lots, but then you plan for these gathering spaces throughout your development. So instead of recreating just in your backyard in your own private space, maybe you go towards, this public space that you gather with your neighbors, you see them there. And additionally, not only to the amenities on site, but there's also recreation areas within the immediate vicinity, a half mile, that are accessible as well. Our final waiver is waiver number 6, and that is also part of the MUR district. So a minimum of 70% of street-facing property lines must contain a building or building wall. That standard, 70%, we're at that 58.6, almost 59%. We've gone through each side of the public streets and kind of figured out that determination, as you can see on the graph on the right. The standard is really intended to support that pedestrian-friendly environment, reduce, parking lots immediately adjacent to roadways. But we find the standard really doesn't consider site amenities and landscaped open space as part of this kind of equation for good development practices that create positive neighborhoods. And also the standard was codified before the city adopted Appendix D of the International Fire Code. And really what that provision means is we need to provide additional access points for emergency services to move quickly throughout a development in order to serve the population. So really what that does is it punches another access place in where otherwise we might have a building, but it's for the public good. So it's part of it. Kind of tying this back all the way to kind of the beginning of my presentation here, in the housing plan that was recently adopted. We just want to note that 2/3 of residences in Louisville are single-family detached houses. So the idea is as development moves forward with residential ideas in the future here, we really need to diversify the housing stock and give alternative options. That single-family detached housing is the most expensive product to build and to buy. So having those variety of options at different price points really would benefit the community and be able to pick and choose where you fit in at. And kind of with that, we also saw in the report that almost 3/4 of residents would likely struggle purchasing the current home they live in if they were on the market today, given the average home sales price. And finally, on this kind of slide, based on the 2047 population forecast, Louisville needs to add around 4,100 new units over the next 23 years in order to keep up with that projected population growth. That's around 178 units a year. So Coal Creek Village does propose 188 units, which, if we're allowed to move forward into the final plan and future applications, that would go towards helping out that situation as well. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I know it was kind of long, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have. We've got our engineer and our developer as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll open up for Commissioner questions of the applicant. Commissioner Baskett.
Hello. Do the town's homes have private backyards?
So I guess I can stay on this slide. So for the townhomes, because they're alley accessed, when you go down that private alley to the rear, your backyard is essentially your driveway. You're pulling into your 2-stall garage, and that is where kind of your vehicles are. So once again, it's reducing that vehicle presence in the development that we can.
Sounds like a no.
Sounds like a no.
No. We encourage them to use our shared gathering spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any data on the square footage of the units?
Of the
Slide
units.
it on.
Not if I
If
flip
you
it
have
up.
that, maybe you can pull that up in a little while. We have other questions for you all.
I have a couple other questions while they're working on those, Chair. So this project approaches what is essentially right now a green site with, lots of native drainage, we'll say, and you're adding in a fair amount of hardscape. Do I see the only detention on the southeast corner in that outlot D?
So that is kind of the detention facility that is planned, but kind of as we would go through the final plan, we'd also have to count for roof drains and all tie into a stormwater system that our state licensed engineer would have designed.
Make sure you're in the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Were you able to hear any of that?
I could.
Okay, sorry. And I can toss it to our civil as well, but basically for all the impervious surface that we add to a site, we have to account for that in our stormwater calculations and make sure that is captured, stored, and released at the historic rate. And so that is done through complex engineering that further questions, I might defer to our civil, who's the expert on that.
Okay. That would be good to just get confirmation of that, because it is a relatively large transition from permeable surface to what would be impermeable. Along those lines, was there any consideration to reduce some of that impermeable surface? There's a fair amount of parking associated, right, with this many units, and it's all surface parking outside of the townhomes that have those two-stall garages. Was there a consideration of adding that parking into any of the buildings or adding in any subgrade parking?
Yeah, so I'm Jason Markel at 5723 Arapahoe in Boulder. So yeah, I'd be happy to answer your question on parking. We have parking in the townhomes on the grade level, so 2 spots per townhome. And then, we have a couple different field parking. Just to give you a general sense of the required versus provided, we have 24 excess parking spaces than what's required by code. So we have an abundance of parking on site to satisfy those conditions.
Okay, so I'm going to stick with some of these maybe sustainability themed questions. With all of the available parking, right, the nice excess available parking, and the relatively creative streets and alleys in here, I don't see on the plan any real appurtenance to deal with snow removal. How have you considered that for all of the parking spaces that are in there in the residence with these streets?
Yeah, we usually have, snow removal areas. If you look kind of west of the multifamily buildings, there's a few, open space areas that could accept, snow. And, to the south of our mixed use area in that parking lot, we have a few, areas that, it might take up a few parking spots, but we can, aggregate it into a corner in those 2 areas, which are sort of the private, parked areas of the site.
Okay, and does that align with your overall grading plan for what you would do in terms of that melt off and the water quality that would come from that?
Yeah, as far as water quality, we've run those calcs, and with the pocket park, with some of our open spaces and the detention, we are satisfying our water quality and metering out to the ultimate sites.
Okay, I may have a little bit more later, but that's it for now.
Sure. All right. Additional questions for the applicant? Do you have those unit sizes at all?
Yeah, we have a variety of sizes, as you can tell, that we sort of pride ourselves on architectural diversity. And multifamily wise, we're in that sort of 900 square feet for 2-bedroom units, and 400 to 500 on either a studio or 1-bedroom. So we have a mix of a variety in the multifam arena. And then as far as townhomes, we have a couple different townhome configurations. One being in the 1,200 square foot range and going up to 1,600 square foot. So we have a couple different configurations on townhomes, and then on the micros, we are in that 300-400 square feet. So I think it's a pretty broad square foot offering, and with that being said, that sort of harkens back to our initial design impetus with this subdivision is attending to the housing crisis. And so, we've been having really a lot of success with smaller cottages, and in other municipalities, we've been proposing, sub-1,000 square foot cottages, and with the price points that we were achieving, we felt like it was a step in the right direction to attend to sort of that missing middle and below for just what your housing report was identifying is that, people can't afford to be here anymore. And so we're trying to not just have deed restricted, and, the confusion with inclusionary housing was at first, we had such efficient product that it automatically became, 80% AMI affordable without any deed restriction. And so we were running the calcs on that, and we were saying, hey, I don't even know if we need to deed restrict this product because it was attending to that segment of the market. So when we looked at it and we looked at, some of the, run up in costs and everything else, we were thinking, okay, we'll deed restrict it. But just so you all know, a lot of these products are going to be, at or below some of that deed restricted levels. So not only are we putting our best foot forward with trying to attend to the housing crisis, we're doing it in a way with efficiency living units that can attend even further because we don't have to deed restrict this product. It can be market rate, and these people can realize the appreciation. So that was sort of the impetus of our whole design moving forward when we initially bought this ground. And I think it's staying true to that, even though we will provide deed restricted housing, but just know that there's non-deed restricted housing here that's gonna service, those people that otherwise couldn't be in Louisville.
Thank you. Commissioner Basket.
Yes. So one of the things this commission has worked on is electric vehicle charging stations. And with multi-unit, that is a deficit for you to bring in 96 apartments. Had you given any consideration to providing electric vehicle charging stations in that multi-unit parking lot?
Yeah, if you have some numbers on that, yeah, go for it.
So we realize we need to look at that. That is within your development code to have that planned for. We've done it on North End project semi-recently here as well. So it is coming. We were just hoping to identify that at the final plan stage as we did with North End as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with the IECC that you've recently adopted, that does come with, some call-outs for vehicle charging. And so we would be complying with that and any revised code that you guys have put forth.
Additional questions for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Bangs.
Yeah, obviously we asked a lot of questions earlier about traffic flow. So the pocket park in the middle extends north-south from South Boulder Road all the way to what's described as Private Alley. So is it fair to assume all the buildings to the west would use Front Street to exit unless they chose to go via Private Alley to Cannon Circle?
Well, we have, a couple different egresses. This alley here, comes out on Front Street here and here. So there's a couple different ways, these folks to the east of the pocket park would come out on Cannon or this private alley. So, you could navigate, through here or come up through here to front. So there's a couple different areas.
Yeah, so I have a definition of private alley. Is it essentially a road or is it proportioned to be essentially an alley?
Yeah, it's sized accordingly to, the aerial access and the traffic that's going to be, utilizing it.
Will people perceive it as a road or will they see it as an alley?
We do our best to sort of mask our alleys. As you can see in the rendering, the alley actually has, greenery around it. So, we do our best not to just have a strip of asphalt, with a bunch of trash cans. We really put forth a lot of effort to have trees, to have, landscape buffers adjacent to that. So it actually, would more feel a little bit like a Warnoff rather than just a straight alley.
Okay, so I've got two more questions. The properties on Harper Street, will they have alley access from the rear?
Sorry, the properties
On
along.
the existing properties on Harper Street, will they be able to access from that private alley to their backyards, or is that?
No, there's a buffer right there. So there's a landscape buffer in between that private alley and their alley. And you can't really see it, but there is an alley back here, right here. That whole piece of blue is, is an alley that they utilize. So we have an alley and they have an alley. And so there's a decent buffer, between these units that are situated up here on the north side of this alley to their units on the south side of their alley.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And then my last question, I know there's concerns with Front Street and traffic flow and access to the middle school. How detailed are the plans on traffic mitigation, pedestrian safety in terms of crossing points, pinch points, et cetera?
Yeah, we utilize, some neck down areas, some traffic calming, and we have, that built in. And then we have, sort of standard traffic analysis along South Boulder Road with, a decel lane and things like that. So, we've analyzed, a lot of the crosswalks, had them lined up so that it's, it's not encumbering any pedestrian experience and increase safety.
So specifically at the south end of Front Street that exists in the plan?
Where it meets up with Harper?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to look and maybe talk with Joel on exactly what is proposed right there. Do you remember, I forget if there's a stop sign or
Yep,
any
so
traffic
on the western side of Front Street there, where that alley comes through, there's a stop sign showed on the plans, and then a crosswalk down, and then there would be kind of an off-site sidewalk connection to tie into the existing sidewalk system that is on Harper and Front Street heading south.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So leveraging off of the previous comments about the alley. So reading this, I've been assuming based on dimensions that emergency vehicles could get through that alleyway. Is that correct? So if you're coming in from the south, you could get from that entranceway to the Cannon Circle?
That is correct, and we've worked with the Louisville Fire Department and the fire marshal to kind of work through those emergency service concerns, but that 26-foot wide width is kind of the requirement to provide aerial access for not only fire, but then it's enough space for any emergency service to get in and out.
Additional questions, Commissioner Troy?
I just want to ask one clarifying question. On this image that you show here, the large parking lot that's below buildings 3 and 4 looks like it has kind of a large tree on the eastern side. I'm looking at a sheet in the packet that actually shows a parking lot that has east and west access from Cannon Circle all the way into Front Street. Just wanted to clarify what the intention was with that parking lot.
If you look at the other side, you'll see sort of a pork chop, like a landscape buffer there. And so the vehicular traffic would divert around that. And the tree is planted in the same, I call it pork chop.
Landscape island, yeah.
Right.
Landscape island.
Okay, so there is access to that large parking lot both from Cannon Circle and from Front Street. Okay, thanks.
And I remember there was a question about setbacks. I forget which commissioner had that question, but I just wanted to touch upon that. We are going to be compliant with our setbacks with IBC and IRC, depending on the unit configuration and building. And so during our permitting process with the building department, that will come up, and we always conform so that there's no, separation, debacles.
I think one of the concerns was along Highway 42 for the sidewalk width. Can you speak to that?
Sidewalk width? Yeah, I think Joel researched that.
So through our kind of discussions with city staff, we know Highway 42 is going to get quite a makeover. Already included in the prelim application before you. We've already reached out to the consultant that the city of Louisville has hired. They've shared with us their basis. So that kind of line work you're seeing along Highway 42, that was kind of their conceptual line work they shared with us at whatever stage they were at however many months ago. Kind of the intent is with your approval and through the final PUD process, we would continue working with them to make sure whatever updates they're planning for, we're also showing in our plans, in our site plan, just to make sure it aligns with that. So right now, that sidewalk width, I think there's a protected bike lane planned for that area, and kind of the tree plantings, where those would be, that is in line with what your consultant is showing to date, and we'll continue to show that along Highway 42.
So it would be potentially a 5-foot sidewalk and a protected bike lane for that future 42 plan?
I would have to check our plans just for the dimensions. I don't know the sidewalk width, but I do know they plan for that protected bike lane with a landscape median. So I can look for that real quick and try to get you an answer if possible.
Great, if possible, yeah. Thanks.
Before you walk away, one other question for you.
Sure.
So with a relatively dense mix and interface between vehicular and pedestrian traffic internal to the development, you talked about your traffic calming approaches with, some of the curvature in the street. There are a lot of these internal walkways and crosswalks. Is the standard from your approach in all of this to have ramps and truncated domes and curb cuts, or are they elevated crosswalks?
I think right now, as the plans are drawn, they are kind of truncated domes and your typical crosswalk just shown. Typically, when we lay out these crosswalks, we want to make sure that you cross the street at a perpendicular manner to kind of traffic, just so you can see oncoming traffic, they can see you. It works really well for safety. Kind of throughout the final plan application, when we get the civil CDs, that would be kind of where these are really fine-tuned. Some of that would be feedback from staff, but then also depending on what works for grading, we may show some elevated crosswalks as well. It's kind of a symbiotic kind of design that we do with staff while we're engineering these spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any quick questions now? Seeing none, I'd like to move into public comment, actually. Just as kind of a forewarning, it seems likely that we'll have a fairly long public comment period this evening, which means we may not be able to wrap up our discussion. We'll see how that timing goes. So we may be reconvening to finalize the application, but let's see how public comment goes for this evening, and we'll make a decision as we go. So if we'll start off with a few public comments, then we'll take a break in a little bit. I believe we have public comment cards.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we do that, I would entertain a motion to enter the emails into public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. As we move into public comment, request that you limit yourselves to 3 minutes, please. There's clocks to assist you in that effort. And begin with stating your name and city of residence.
Okay, first up is Susan Massey.
Hi. So I'm Susan. I live on Main Street. I'm excited for all the people who get to come live at the end of Main Street because it's an incredible community. So they're very lucky. I also, because I love being at the end of Main Street, and I'm friends with a lot of people at Steel Ranch because of all the foot traffic. They see me in my yard gardening, and they talk. And so I kind of want to advocate for some things that I feel like maybe haven't been addressed tonight. In terms of mixed use and commercial, we don't really need any more nail salons or massage areas or State Farm insurance agencies sort of. I just want some intentionality about what happens in that commercial space. I know that in terms of mixed use, it's, there's not really a whole lot of economic incentive probably to care about exactly how well that commercial space does in terms of the profitability of the development. So, I just hope there's more than lip service paid to that area.
in terms of the architecture, it was brought up that it was maybe aligning with Delo or Steel Ranch townhomes. I don't know, it seems like that there's been this sort of strategy to reduce the massing of the size of the apartments by putting like 5 or 6 different materials in a sort of high contrast pastiche. It's exuberant pastiche, I think would be maybe the way I'd describe it, but I think what's going on locally in terms of our townhomes, I don't think they're nearly that high contrast. I think they're much more restrained in their palette. And I think they have an opportunity maybe to refine the palette a bit more to be in the character of our neighborhood. Sorry, I know I'm on time. The question about the 30, so that those 34-foot units that are along the railway track that are asking for not having a 20-foot setback for the waiver. I would just like some clarification on if that's sort of tantamount to asking for a height increase, because is it going to affect solar access for those of us who have, there are a lot of single-family homes with low roofs, so just making sure that some of those really tall structures are not impeding the ability for solar access for those of us along Main Street. There's a huge omission tonight of not showing any of the way that these things back up, these units back up to Main Street. There's quite a prominence that's going to be seen on Main Street in the back of the units. So I'd advocate for having some studies on what that is. I'm kind of shy. I've never heard of anybody in landscape ever say that advocate for not having yards, not having gardens, and giving 2-car garages and 2-way streets in the name of new urbanism and not having gardens. I really would love to see some reconsideration of that idea of the whatever the allotment is for the community space that wasn't required because of some redistricting or something in 1819. It'd be really nice to bring some of that back. Community gardens, the British Guy allotments, we know they work, they're great. Anyway, I'm time, and those are the things I'd ask for y'all to consider.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your service. My name is Micah Abram, and I've lived in Louisville for over 20 years as a homeowner in the Little Italy neighborhood with a child attending Louisville Middle School. I'm concerned about the potential impacts this development will have on our neighborhood's safety, infrastructure, and character. While I support responsible growth and housing initiatives, I am here to ask the Commission to pause the approval process of the preliminary plat of Coal Creek Village until additional conversations and studies can take place between not only the city, but also the residents and the developer. So, traffic safety and parking is already a major issue in our small little neighborhood. The narrow streets are frequently congested, and the current proposal doesn't really sufficiently discuss how the city or the new development will really take that on and help us. Front Street was never built to handle the increase in cars and people that this development will bring, especially with a middle school right there around the corner. Opening this small neighborhood street to a major city road will create congestion and pose serious safety risks to pedestrians and to students. I urge us all to do our due diligence and study the impacts and safety of the expansion of Front Street before considering approving the preliminary plat. I'd like to respectfully remind the Commission that both the Louisville Municipal Code and the Special Review Use Analysis emphasizes and represents the city's commitment to the importance of designing new developments in harmony with existing neighborhoods. It is crucial that this principle is respected when planning the Coal Creek Village, particularly that this is only the first time the public has had the opportunity to speak, that Little Italy residents have had a voice, an opportunity to share concerns. Despite multiple attempts, residents have received no response from the developer, and this lack of engagement makes it even more important for the Planning Commission and the City Council to ensure a balance is struck between new and existing developments before the preliminary plat is approved or could be approved. This isn't about asking to stop Coal Creek Village development. I'm not fighting today for less density or thoughtful green spaces. It is about ensuring that this development doesn't compromise the safety and quality of the life for the existing residents of Little Italy. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you together to find solutions that benefit and protect us all. Please do not approve this tonight. Thank you.
If that's like a breach of decorum, we ask that you do not applaud for anybody for or against when they speak. Thank you. Next up.
Cynthia Cohn.
And then can we also look up to see if there's anybody online?
There are 3 people, nobody's raised their hands.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. Cynthia Korn. I live in Louisville. I also have a property in Little Italy. And Little Italy, in your monthly water bill this month, is featured because it's History Month. And walking tours on historic trees, Louisville's Little Italy, and 100 years at the Louisville Library. So, and my home there is currently had the preliminary historic evaluation, goes back to 1905, and had a mechanics garage with advertising from 1945 and 1950. So I echo the prior person's comments really about the safety. And in fact, one of the things I submitted, I went at 3:45 the other day because both of my children went through Louisville Middle School, and I know what it's like at beginning of day and when school lets out. Sure enough, cars lined all the way from Griffith to Maine, from Griffith to the railroad tracks, and south to Lafayette. To your point on the questions of westbound traffic, where's it going to go? All that traffic is going to go straight to our middle school, and then if you want to go to Boulder, it's going to go down to Lafayette. So it's a reasonable request. This traffic study, have we seen it? And I was so relieved. You all do such a great job representing us. Yeah, you all were going there. So the traffic study, let's see it. Let's see it. And did it take place at those congested times a day, every day? And back to school night will flow into the neighborhoods. And they spoke to the congested roads already. If there are cars parked on Harper on both sides or on front on both sides, you can't get through. And they're going to use this as a major construction thoroughfare. So we're going to barrel a bunch of construction vehicles down Front Street where our kids commute. This is a school zone for people coming from all sorts of directions. So you asked really great questions. They're critical. I've been so impressed with this group of people from Little Italy. They're looking for solutions. They actually want to figure out how to have this Markle development work. As what I heard tonight, I really wanted to be more positive, but how does 350 square feet development and experiment match our comprehensive plan? And I think it's reasonable to ask staff to delineate section 16 and the comprehensive plan. Other developments have done the same. A line by line, show us how this matches up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up.
Next is Lauren Foster.
And I was just wondering if you received, my neighbor Joyce, who's here,
ceded her 3 minutes to me, so I'm going to speak for 6, or
All right.
hopefully a little less for everyone's sake here tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I want to first thank the Planning Department and the commissioners for your time. My wife was a city planner for 15 years, and I know that this process is involved, and we really appreciate your service and your time. My name's Lauren Foster. I was born and raised in Boulder County. Myself, my wife Terry, and our 2 kids, Asher and Ella, all call Little Italy our forever home. The Colt Creek development has come before you with a preliminary proposal. And one thing that we do like is the waiver for the amount of building coverage in favor of green space in what would become, by far, the densest residential area in Old Town Louisville. The preliminary plat, however, proposes bisecting our historic neighborhood with an incomplete road that will route both development and South Boulder Road traffic into the Louisville Middle School Safety Corridor, where every weekday, hundreds of children walk and bike to school. There is no bus access. They're expected in this neighborhood to be on foot or on bikes. Matt mentioned old approvals for a connected Front Street. He showed you 2 plats, one from the late 1800s and one from the early 1900s. And finally, the only other approved plat, as a commissioner pointed out, was in 2016 for a much smaller development. And that was approved back when a railway station was expected, and that development was called Coal Creek Station. I would urge you as a planning commission to read and focus instead on the recent 2019 Louisville Transportation Master Plan. And if you look at those, the 8 goals, 4 policies, and 10 programs in that plan all support converting that Front Street access to a multi-use pathway where emergency vehicles can access in case of emergencies, but all other vehicles are restricted throughways. Every project proposed by the plan in this part of Louisville, those include CP1, BK11, MU5, are all focused on safe walking and biking access in this part of town, with 3 entrances and exits to major regional road connections and being less than a 10-minute walk from downtown. There's no need to route additional traffic through these areas that are already highlighted as being safety problems in this part of Louisville in a transportation master plan that focuses on increased walkability, bikeability, and not on routing more cars on small residential roads. Additionally, though the city of Louisville started the process in the early 20th century, the city only finished a subset of the formal easements for the alley behind Harper Street. We haven't seen a lot of information about that. When you asked the developer about it, he said, what houses? We're talking about the houses in the existing community that has not been communicated with during this process. The alleyway is not protected by the existing plan. In fact, it's cut off on the west end where there are 2 unplatted properties, and that is because the city did not finish the formal easements for the alley. Nonetheless, both the city and the owners of those unplatted lands at the west end have been using and maintaining the land for as long as Mary Rizai has lived there, which is 67 years. Erasure of existing property access and garage access is coupled with my grave concerns as a hydrologist about the drainage plan. On page 17 of 32, you'll see that the floodwaters at what is already a low point in the city are routed all towards Little Italy. Every arrow on the edge of that development is routed towards Little Italy, many of whose houses were hand-built on cobblestone or cinder block foundations. The developer could protect our historic neighborhood and the existing alleyway access by removing only 4 to 8 of the townhomes you saw on that property. 4 to 8 out of 188 units, and pushing that private alley or Avenue C on the plan north. There's a lot of research documenting how suburban development models driven by car traffic break up our ability to connect with our neighbors and engage in our local communities. And it's been really refreshing to live in a small town, and specifically in a vibrant historic neighborhood where that is not the case. The people in this room are not only my neighbors, they're my friends. We text weekly and invest in local events. On any given day, we can be found walking through Front Street together, so a few of us can walk abreast talking. Please delay this preliminary plat vote. Beyond that, it is your charge to evaluate new developments while being in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. Ask that the developer and the planning department collaborate with Little Italy to keep their alley and right to access their properties and garages intact. ask that they use this same adjustment to properly plan for floods and not route drainage into our historic neighborhood. Most importantly, do not approve a plan that goes against the 2019 Transportation Master Plan goals by routing South Boulder Road through to Little Italy's Front Street, which ends only blocks beyond in a private parking lot for Delo and does not promote or enhance complete streets. The developer must remove all non-emergency vehicle access to Little Italy by either Front Street or the alley so that future Coal Creek residents, Little Italy residents, and Louisville Middle School students can continue to safely walk and bike to school and community events downtown. Thank you for prioritizing this urgent matter.
Thank you.
All right, Mark Zeman is next.
And can we let know who's up after that too?
Got to your. Yes, my name is Mark Zeman. I live at 1439 Front Street. Been there 31 years. And I've seen several plans for this field, from storage units to single-family houses to Bill Arnold's Coal Street Station plan, which was smaller than this, and now the current plan, which is a huge increase. If you look at what's on that wall up there, this project does not apply to that. You know, preserve the quality of life in our community. Best small town atmosphere. This is like shoehorning a major city project into a little tiny, not well-shaped field. It's undermined. They brought in over 300 dump truck loads of dirt and backfilled that thing. So it used to be a bowl, now it's flat across. There's a lot of things that need to be discussed about this because we're not talking to the, you don't get the talk. We don't get the. Bill Arnold used to make, the guy who owned it before me, before these guys, he would email me, talk to residents in the neighborhood, then he died. So we reach out through emails to Marco Holmes, they don't even respond. And then this comes down and, Front Street's got to go through. It doesn't need to go through. It's not built for two-way traffic. You put cars on both sides of it, we have to stop and let other guys' cars go through to get to our houses now. So I'm just asking for you to give this a little bit more time and not vote on this today and push it out so some communication can be done to improve what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up.
I have the difficult name. My name is Linda Cadiora, and I live in Little Italy. And I'm here today to ask to delay the vote on the Coal Creek Village development. Coal Creek Village is a new name and a new plan, has a new developer, and has a new city planner. I also was born and raised in Boulder. The revitalization project has been going on for it's in its third decade. I am in my fourth decade living in Little Italy. I'm asking to delay the vote. The plans in the Delo development changed. It is no longer possible for Front Street to continue past Griffith. The Front Street connection is now a means of routing volumes of vehicles from South Boulder Road into Little Italy. As shown, the Front Street connection is a direct violation of the Comprehensive Plan Section 17.14.010, Item B, which reads, "The intent of the revitalization plan is to protect adjacent neighborhoods from adverse impacts of urban development." This plan intentionally directs traffic from South Boulder Road through the urban development into Little Italy. Little Italy already doesn't support two-way traffic. And as people have said, you have to yield to each other to weave down Harper Street, Cannon Street, or Front Street in Little Italy. They want, if this was to happen, the Front Street connection would dump onto Griffith. Griffith is already a crowded street and cannot support additional vehicles. Griffith crosses a railroad. when the train's not coming, but if the train is coming, Griffith is already deadlocked. During school drop-off and pickup in the area, Griffith and Main is severely congested. It's hazardous. It's basically middle school chaos with a touch of preschool. There's a preschool there too. It's cars and children traffic. So this is an opportunity for a new connection at Front Street that allows for emergency vehicles, does not allow for other vehicles, but has that connection. The revision could have adults and so the Delo this new development and the Delo property, besides having people and adults and cars, has children that need to get to school. If we close down that connection and allow it to be a safe route to school, the school bus can pick up there. That would pick up both for Coal Creek Village and for Little Italy. And it could get, then go on to wherever it needs to go. But that could carry elementary school kids. It would be an elementary school school bus, and it already has been that in the past. It would be a safe route to school. So I'm asking you to delay tonight's vote. I would like nothing more than for the Markles to go on to their next development, but be able to point out to Louisville's Coal Creek Village development and say, this is how we made it work. This is how we followed the intent of the comprehensive plan. This is how we minimized adverse effects on a little neighborhood in the middle of 2 urban developments. And we did it in conjunction with the voices of the citizens. So thank you for your time, and I hope you delay the vote.
Thank you.
And next is Carl Cantrell, I think, and then Tammy Listow goes after that.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Carl Cantrell. I've lived in Little Italy my entire life. I am starting my 60th year there soon. My parents have been there since before 1950, and their families before that. I currently live in my parents' home since they passed away on the corner of Griffith and Front Street. And during peak times of school drop-off, pickup, or people going to work, I have literally had to wait 10 minutes to pull out of my driveway just so I can leave the neighborhood. And that's current. I don't know how old or how new the traffic study is for that area, but I can tell you it's not up to date. I have had times, I work in the CTC by the cemetery, I have had times it's taken me 15 minutes to come down Highway 42's hill just to get home. And when it's snowing, it's even worse than that. And all that side traffic, if there's an accident, the weather's bad, or it's horribly congested at rush hour, is already bleeding over into our neighborhood without the extension of Front Street to South Boulder Road. All that extension's gonna do is exacerbate the situation and make it even worse. I've seen impatient people driving at 30 and 40 miles an hour on those streets, almost hitting children in the morning or in the afternoons. I've seen it myself. Before you approve anything, even a preliminary plan, I request of you and I implore you to spend an afternoon or a morning, Monday through Friday, and go down there and just watch the traffic and the interaction on the roads as it is. The original plan for that area did not include the scale and the density of the housing they are planning to put in there. And by adding 188 residents or 188 homes, 2 to 4 residents per home in that area, is just gonna inundate our neighborhood with traffic it cannot, and it was never designed to handle. It's just too much for that neighborhood. And all you would be doing is extending Front Street by 1 additional block and dead-ending Front Street at Griffith anyway. There's nowhere else to go. You either go east to Highway 42 or west a half a block over the tracks to Main Street. That's all you're gonna do is accomplish nothing. And when the train comes through and the crossings are down, it's just gonna be total gridlock for 10 to 15 minutes. Some of those trains take 10 minutes to come through. So all I'm asking is a proper study, and please don't approve anything till you see it with your own eyes. And maybe you would understand how it's already affecting our neighborhood. I believe, at least here tonight, I'm the longest living resident in that neighborhood that's in the room tonight. And I believe it's the last original neighborhood left. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And next, Tammy Listoka, and then Nick Facemeyer after that.
Hi there. My name, sorry, Carl's gonna make me cry. Sorry.
Quite all right.
My name is Tammy Listoka. I'm a resident of Little Italy, or what the old timers used to call Lil Italy. My great-grandfather bought my house in 1906. It's held 5 generations of my family, the Harney and Listokas. My family also built another house next door to mine by hand in Little Italy. My great-grandfather, whose photo is actually hanging on the wall behind this screen, which was taken at my old family farm, which my grandmother sold to Louisville in the late 1990s to be used as open space. This open space also houses the baseball fields and what is now 7th Generation Farm. I've previously served on the board of the Louisville History Foundation as a director and treasurer for 16 consecutive years. Frankly, I'm terrified about the impact that the extension of Front Street to South Boulder Road will have on Little Italy. The amount of traffic has already been excessive due to backups on 95th, where people cut through our neighborhood to save time. In fact, in 2013, my dog was hit and killed by a car speeding through the neighborhood. This person was not a resident of Little Italy. It's not hard to imagine, with increased traffic and this new proposed connection, that this could become one of our own Louisville Middle School students. I've previously lived in a house on Harper Street that backs to the alley, and I strongly support that my neighbors should not lose access to their garages or homes because the city failed to connect easements behind the 2 unplatted properties at the end of this alley. That alley has been there in use and maintained as long as I can remember. I'm asking to please do not allow the developer to connect non-emergency roads through our historic, quiet neighborhood. Please ask the developer to redesign their plan to accommodate existing resident access and the use of Harper Alley. I'm proud of the legacy my family has left in Louisville over more than a century, and I hope you will delay approval of this preliminary plot until the developer addresses these urgent concerns of myself, my neighbors in Little Italy, and parents of Louisville Middle School children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're approaching 9:30. Can I get just a raise of hands of how many people who want to speak that haven't? So we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've got at least another half an hour of public comment. Knowing that we're not going to be able to get through the full process, we have an option of either reopening in probably 1 month's time with public comment. We could push through to 10 o'clock, but I think we're better off in leaving the public comment period open so that we can refresh everybody's minds in 1 month time. And then, yeah, I don't want to have to finish public comment and certainly not close it out, only to reopen the hearing for further deliberations when we come back. So having shared that with the commissioners too, I feel like we should call it maybe for this evening and just reopen then.
I was
Yeah.
just one thought or one comment, Chair, and I'm comfortable with that. And my concern was going to be that people had come here and wanted to speak, but when you mentioned, coming back, I sort of saw some head nods of people that made it here tonight, but would be willing to come back next month. So that gives me
So much reassurance.
some
Yeah, no, I'm
reassurance
concerned
that-
about that too, asking
Yeah.
people to come back a second time.
Want to make sure we're heard and everybody has time.
This is our life. Yes,
Right, yeah, no,
absolutely.
we appreciate that, yeah.
Yes, we want to hear you. We absolutely want to hear you. And so, my concern was just that if people had made that effort tonight and wanted to be heard,
We'll be here in a month.
Okay, all right. Good to hear.
All right, then. With that, then, and we discuss it in advance, that we would just move to the next month to continue it to, right, as opposed to an overflow meeting. Right, it was going to be a couple people or
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be on work travel abroad a month time, so I won't have a chance to comment then, if that's the plan.
Okay, that'll still leave us with a quorum. I hate to lose you because you're. Okay. All right.
In October, yeah.
Okay, great. So then I would entertain a motion to continue to our next meeting on October. Anybody quickly got that date?
October 10th.
10th, great, thanks. Yes.
I'll move a continuation until October 10th.
All right, thanks. And what was?
I'll second that, and I just wanted to get a confirmation from staff that was going to
Works
work
for you all?
Yeah.
Yes, that will work for staff, yes.
Great, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing any opposed? Hearing none?
Well,
Motion
I
carried.
oppose, but 1 against 5.
Okay. All right. We've got one in opposition. All right. Yeah, no, we will miss you. So, all right. Thank you. We just have a few other items we take care of at the end of every meeting here. Let's see. We opened up to Planning Commission to see if anybody has any comments on other issues. Seeing none, we can move it to, we are going to have a comprehensive plan update. It's going to be a brief one from staff, so it might be worth your wait if you have the time. So thanks. Can we move on with that?
Yeah, I didn't have much of a presentation. It was just sort of a standing monthly update, as you all are the advisory committee for the comprehensive plan. There's a brief memo in your packet, just letting you know what's going on. The first big thing is that at your last meeting, if you recall, Planning Commission affirmed the vision statement and core values for the comp plan. I just wanted to let you know that council subsequently also affirmed them. So we took what you gave us, the great edits, took them to council. Council made some slight edits too. So the version that's in your packet is the one that they affirmed, is the terminology you're using. It could change at the end of the process when the plan goes to adoption. Like those could be tweaked a little bit further, but for now, those are sort of the foundation for the development of the plan in terms of core values and vision statement. So that was the first thing. Second thing is that in terms of status update for the project, we are ramping up toward our next window of community engagement, which will start here in late October. That's when we'll really start to get into future land use options for looking at potentially land use changes in certain areas of town, things like that. So there'll be a pretty meaty engagement that happens at that point in time. And our public open house is scheduled for Thursday, November 7th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the rec center in the gym. And then we'll have some other structured events in and around that time, or we'll have some sort of structured activity with participants to look at future land use scenarios and options. So those are the big updates. There's lots going on with the project, but I wanted to at least let you know, keep you apprised of those things. But happy to answer any questions about any specific elements of the project if you want to do that.
Very exciting. I think that may be the first scheduled meeting in the gym. I don't know if anybody in the audience remembers any meetings in the bigger space there. That's great to hear that we got that kind of critical mass coming out. Otherwise, additional commissioner questions, comments? Noting, of course, the public comment that was received regarding the language regarding
Yes,
small town.
received.
Character
Yeah.
neighborhood. All right. We have one item that's tentatively scheduled. We'll now have this on our next month's meeting. Anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, that's a new state law that essentially requires us to address natural medicine businesses, which Matt is also in the lead on. And so we'll have to define that use, which includes, for example, clinics that administer psilocybin and things of that nature. So it is a state law, and it's something we're being really sensitive to. And so you'll have a draft ordinance. I think in October is the goal for that. Matt, you know more better than I do.
I think November, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it November?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
November.
All right, November.
All right, so that may or may not be next month, but most likely by November meeting. Great. Thank you all. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you all for coming out, and we look forward to hearing more.
11 to 257 yards. A good drive to another narrow fairway, this one framed by tall fescue and a right side bunker, leaves a middle iron to a green guarded by two gaping side bunkers, promising beach time for anyone leaving their shot